I call the 2,362nd meeting of the Milwaukie City Council to order. This meeting is being conducted in person at City Hall and by video conference. The public may participate in this meeting by coming to City Hall, joining the Zoom webinar, or watching on the city's YouTube channel or Comcast cable channel 30 in city limits. There will be opportunities for the public to speak during this meeting. If you would like to address council, you may come to City Hall. However, seating in the chambers is limited. If you're interested in speaking, please let staff know by emailing ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov for those on Zoom, or by submitting a yellow comment card for those at City Hall. When it is time to take public comments, staff will monitor the comment cards, the email inbox, the Zoom participant list, and chat. We will take comments in the order that they are received and seen. Written comments may be emailed to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. The public may also participate in the Zoom webinar by phone by dialing 1-253-215-8782, entering webinar ID 831-8669-0512, and passcode 023745. If you are calling in through Zoom and would like to make a comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. Spanish translation services are available upon request. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. Contamos con servicio de traducción al español cuando sea solicitado. Se pide al público que solicite servicios de traducción y otros servicios de accesibilidad para reuniones por lo menos 48 horas antes de la reunión. Translation services are also available in other languages. All righty. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the States of America, to the Republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The City of Milwaukie respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalapuya Etc. Treaty, with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. Tonight's announcements. After a 2-year break due to COVID-19, the Llewellyn neighborhood and Ardenwald-Johnson Creek neighborhood are bringing back their annual August concerts in the park, and they couldn't be more excited. Llewellyn holds their concerts each Wednesday evening at 6:30 p.m. at Ball Michelle Park, and Ardenwald-Johnson Creek holds their concerts each Thursday at 7 p.m. at Ardenwald Park. The concerts are all free to attend. Join the second round of in-person engagement activities for the development of Scott Park on Thursday, August 4th from 6 to 8 p.m. The planning meeting will include draft conceptual designs for all to review and comment on. The event will be held at the park and include food. Help the city prioritize what should be included in 2 developing parks, including Bowman Bray in the Lake Road neighborhood and the Balfour Park in the Ardenwald-Johnson Creek neighborhood. 2 short surveys are now available on Engage Milwaukie. Please stop by when you have a chance to participate. The Bowman Bray Park open house, originally scheduled for July 26th, but had to be postponed due to the hot weather, will now be held on Saturday, August 6th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. The event is a drop-in open house style event with face painting, balloon animals, yard games, a kids design table, and other activities. Free food will also be provided to the first 50 participants. The city's annual open streets event called Carefree Sundays returns on Sunday, August 7th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. The event opens more than 5 miles of streets to people by closing them to cars. The event is not possible without dozens of volunteers. Visit the city's website to learn more about the event and register to volunteer today. Enjoy an evening of live music while enjoying riverfront views on Saturday, August 13th at Milwaukie Bay Park. Bridge City Soul includes a who's who of the local soul and R&B scene. Food and drink will be available for purchase at the event. Also be sure to come as early as 5 p.m. to partake in duck races hosted by the Milwaukie Parks Foundation and North Clackamas Watersheds Council. The concert begins at 6 p.m. For more information about each of these events and others, please visit the city's homepage at milwaukeeoregon.gov or call 503-786-7555. Do you have something more?
I just wanted to add that if people want to get their ducks for the duck races, we'll be selling tickets for the ducks at the concerts tomorrow and Thursday in Ball Michelle and Ardenwald Parks, as well as at the farmers market this Sunday.
Aren't they doing a bonus week for Porch Fest
Oh, yeah. Oh, right.
Yeah.
this Friday? For folks that didn't perform, they're doing a bonus week. It's Friday.
Nice.
Cool. So,
Literally.
and that's Porch Fest, MilwaukeePorchFest.org. What was
The
the,
Milwaukee Arts Committee on Facebook, and they have the map. I don't know if it's on the Porch Fest site.
Yeah, they've done a map for the bonus week, and it's about 8 or 10 acts, I think, on their Facebook page. Yeah.
cool. Any other announcements? All right. Next item is Proclamations and Awards, National Farmers Market Week. Proclamation, and it will be presented by our counselor, Spady, and Celebrate Milwaukie Inc. President Melanie Bennett.
Come on up, Melanie. Everybody loves the Milwaukee's Farmers Market. We knew that before COVID, and we certainly know it after 2 years of COVID. It became even more important to the community. It's funny that we didn't do this proclamation until just a few years ago, but it's become a regular part of our summer now. So I'll let Melanie tell us what's up with the market this year.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Good evening, Mayor Gamba and City Council. My name is Melanie Bennett. I'm a resident of Milwaukie and also the board president for Celebrate Milwaukie Incorporated, or CMI, which is the parent organization of the Farmers Market. I'm very happy to be here tonight to hear your proclamation in support of National Farmers Market Week. Farmers markets are an increasingly important part of our food network in this country, and we're very fortunate here in Milwaukie to have our very own market, which is still going strong in its 24th season. So very exciting there. It's important, and especially so over these past 2 years, to have access to fresh, healthy food, as well as the opportunities to support local farmers, producers, and other small businesses. In addition, at the market, we also offer food support programs such as SNAP, WIC, and Double Up Food Bucks, and those have seen dramatic increases over the pandemic. And we are very happy and proud to be able to offer those programs, which are assisted with some various community grants. So we can't do this, though, without our many, many partners, and we deeply appreciate the support that we receive from the city, which has helped the market grow into one of our community's strongest and best-loved institutions. The city is a wonderful partner, and we're very grateful for that. So thank you for your support today of National Farmers Market Week, and thank you for your support year-round of Milwaukee's Farmers Market.
Thank you. Whereas farmers markets are an integral part of Oregon's food system and agricultural economy, and whereas the 130 plus farmers markets in Oregon are important sales outlets for farmers and food business owners, generating revenue that supports the sustainability of family farms and the revitalization of rural communities. And whereas farmers markets provide citizens of all income levels with access to healthful, locally produced foods through the Milwaukie Farmers Market and over 70 other Oregon markets that accept Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, SNAP benefits, and other critical food access programs. And whereas the Milwaukie Farmers Market is celebrating 24 years as a cornerstone of our community, well-loved by customers, neighbors, and vendors alike. And whereas the City Council recognizes the importance of expanding agricultural marketing opportunities that assist and encourage the next generation of farmers and ranchers, generate farm income, and to help stimulate business development and job creation, build community connections through rural and urban linkages, provide access to fresh, healthy food for all of Oregon's citizens, and more. Now, therefore, I, Mark Gamba, Mayor of the City of Milwaukie Municipal Corporation, the County of Clackamas, and the State of Oregon, with the consent of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of August 7 through 13, 2022, as Farmers Markets Week, in conjunction with the National Farmers Market Week, and do call on all Milwaukeeans to celebrate farmers markets with appropriate observance and activities.
Does that include berry eating?
Does that include berry eating?
Yeah. How do we appropriately observe this, Melanie?
That would be highly appropriate.
Okay, good. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll see you on Sunday.
All right. All right, so let's see, where's my script? Next up, Climate Collaborative Campaign, a proclamation. This will be presented by our Climate and Natural Resources Manager, Natalie Rogers.
Hi there, let me see if I can cue this up. Okay, let me share. Yeah, that would be great. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie. I'm the Climate and Natural Resources Manager over at Public Works. I'm with Warren Parker III, the Manager of Business Marketing for PGE. Warren and I have actually worked together for the last 3 years now on Climate Collaborative. There was a little hiccup in, the global health crisis that might have delayed it the first year. But now we're excited to be here celebrating our second year of the Climate Collaborative, which is a really big initiative between Portland General Electric, the City of Milwaukie, Energy Trust of Oregon, but it's also a celebration of other local community nonprofits and community-based organizations. Essentially, the goal is to tie together all of the work that we've each individually been doing in a celebration of kind of local community climate action. Milwaukee's had the awesome opportunity of kind of being the pilot climate collaborative community for essentially, hopefully, a longer campaign with other communities around the area. And I'll let Warren kind of introduce himself more and maybe how he's been working with the city. And then we'll just show a little bit about the Climate Collaborative.
Yeah, so hello everyone, Warren Parker III, he, him, his pronouns. And as Natalie said, I'm the Business and Community Marketing Manager at PGE, and I'm super excited to be here and help engage the community in education and awareness around Milwaukee's Climate Action Plan over the course of the next 3 months through marketing initiatives, both digital and really feeling like we can finally do it in person at events throughout the next 3 months, kicking off, as we say here, on August 7th, this Sunday at Carefree Sunday, and then doing events in September and October, focusing on kids' education and engagement, and then culminating in October during the Arbor Day celebration, where we will host the second Electric Yard Tool Exchange program and demoing PGE's all-electric demo home. So you would all be welcome to come out and tour this very cool tiny home that we've built that's all electric and shows that you can do it in any space possible.
And so, PGE offers a lot of programs that Milwaukie community members, the city itself, as well as businesses can participate in. There's a lot of kind of new stuff coming out each day. The city has its own programs. Our local community groups have their own programs. And even though they're not all marketed as climate action, kind of that's the goal of this collaborative campaign, is kind of showing that in a coordinated effort, we're just kind of bringing to the surface all of the great work that is going on that aligns with Milwaukee's Climate Action Plan. So we're really excited. I think, this is going to be something that we can replicate in the future, and Warren and I are now getting it down where it's like All right, same thing? Yeah, we got it. So we're really excited to be able to have community members kind of start to recognize it and really start to see maybe more of the work that local community groups are doing already in the name of climate action. Are there any questions on the campaign? Oh, and make sure you go online and sign your own climate pledge. So we'll be having a link available and folks can go and sign a climate pledge. We got about 90 to 100 last year.
Just over 100 signatures from community members, available in both English and Spanish. And they can sign the pledge saying that they'll take action in their homes or at their businesses to support Milwaukee's climate action plan and combat the climate crisis.
And folks can find resources and more on that same pledge website.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I took advantage of the tool exchange last year. I have an electric mower and an electric chainsaw now, and they both work better than the gasoline version, and they're way easier to use. Way easier to use.
We're transitioning for our own kind of public works operations. We've been in the process of transitioning all of our tools as possible over to electric, and our crews are really liking it, not only because of just the ease of use, but also it just makes a better work environment considering employee health and stuff. So
Much quieter.
and so a lot of great love over at Public Works for electric tools. I know I have a few things sitting aside in my shed that I'm just eager to participate this year for. So
Are you calculating for a maybe more robust response given how wildly popular it was last year?
Yeah, we totally are, and we're making it easier to do the exchange. So last year, if you participated, you recycled your tool, and then we gave you a gift card to go purchase a tool, and now you can actually purchase the tool ahead of the exchange. So when you come to recycle your old tool, you can pick up your new tools on site.
Oh, nice.
Milwaukie was the first one to do the electric tool exchange with PGE, and I think it was all of our eyes were opening, just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think we're showcasing that we're willing to try anything and be a little bit of the guinea pig, but it benefits us because now we get our second tool exchange in Milwaukie already.
Yeah, it's cool. The Metro mayors have their legislative priorities list, and the committee that I'm the chair of, one of the items that ended up on it through no fault of mine is that they want the ability to ban gas-powered
Blowers.
all of it. Blowers, mowers, all of it, because mostly because of sound.
Yeah.
But obviously those are highly polluting devices.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of have to consider not only the time of use, but also storage too, and everything you need to have to store those responsibly, particularly in hot weather and enclosed spaces. So.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned about the workers too, I used to do a lot of that landscaping stuff and mowing and all of it. I used to go to foreclosure homes and do it on each foreclosure home maintenance. And yeah, it's a lot to breathe in throughout the day. Yep.
Yeah, and
Especially in the heat too, all that
it's
stuff.
so commonly accepted that I think a lot of times folks forget of kind of what the PPE, the protective wear that they should be wearing with it. So electric tools are just a really good option because you don't really have to even think about that as long as your physical safety is covered.
Yeah.
And it's just go.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no pulling.
Right. There's no taking it to the shop because you forgot to drain the oil last season, and now all of a sudden the motor's all jammed up.
Gas ratio.
All that.
Definitely.
All of that. Yeah. Yeah, they're awesome. Cool. All right, whereas the city of Milwaukie adopted a climate action plan in 2018 establishing goals of net zero emissions from electricity by 2030, net zero emissions from building fuels by 2035, and community carbon neutrality by 2045. And whereas Milwaukee City Council declared, I know it says 2040, but it's not. So I'm correcting it on the fly.
Good catch.
That's right.
There's some typos there.
I was like, we could do that. Let's do that.
It's all right. I'll just hustle a little more. It's fine.
Whereas Milwaukee City Council declared a climate emergency in 2020 in response to the urgency of the climate change Whereas Portland General Electric and the city have been working in partnership to accomplish zero carbon electricity through climate action outreach, energy efficiency, renewable energy, and community participation in innovative technology and programming. And whereas Portland General Electric and the city and the Energy Trust of Oregon are continuing the Climate Collaborative, a joint initiative to raise community awareness on community climate action and increase participation in climate-aligned energy initiatives to help the city reach its goals. After a successful campaign in 2021 and with over 100 community members signing a climate pledge, and whereas the Climate Collaborative integrates in-person and online education, volunteerism, local events, and promotion of community-based organizations to celebrate and enhance Milwaukee's dedication to climate action. And whereas the Climate Collaborative invites the community to explore the nexus of climate action strategies happening in Milwaukee, including decarbonizing energy and transportation in the built environment, expanding natural resources and urban canopy, and strengthening community partnerships and stewardship. Now, therefore, I, Mark Gamba, Mayor of the City of Milwaukee, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas and the State of Oregon, do hereby proclaim August 2022 as the start of the Climate Collaborative campaign to raise awareness of climate action.
Thank you all, and stop by Carefree Sunday to say hello. We'll be at Ball Michelle. Near the beer garden, may I say. I did not select the site. I will appreciate it, though. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate you guys.
Alrighty. Our next item is the nuclear arms disarmament resolution. This will be presented by Council President Kathy Heisey.
Thank you.
There's someone in there under Oregon PSR. Is that possible?
That is, yes, that is Kelly. This, as you heard the mayor say, is a resolution, not a proclamation, because it is an actual call to action. You may not be aware of this, but Hiroshima Day, which commemorates and honors the tremendous loss that occurred when the U.S. dropped bombs on Hiroshima, Japan, and Nagasaki during World War II, is next week. And so this was a timely opportunity to do this resolution. And I've invited Kelly Campbell from Oregon PSR to join us via Zoom. She has actually reached out to myself and the mayor for quite some time now to encourage us to adopt a resolution about this, because cities are really, like so many other global issues, showing up and taking a leadership role when it comes to saying that nuclear arms are bad for humans. They're bad for our planet. And it's time for us to acknowledge that in a very serious way. So that's Kelly up there on the screen. Thank you for being here, Kelly. And this has a personal note for me as well. Nuclear disarmament has been something that Quakers have been involved in for a very long time. And Carol Erner is a local activist who is also a Quaker, and she's a friend of mine and has been instrumental in sort of the anti-nuclear movement in Oregon and in the Portland metro area. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge Carol, because she's been a tremendous leader. She's not a Milwaukeean, but she would be if she could be. And she has been really an inspiration and a light to people in taking on tasks that seem bigger than ourselves and saying we actually do have a role here. So I don't want to go into too much more, but I did want to also acknowledge that today is the opening of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Conference in New York. And that's a conference that was delayed for years by COVID. It's finally occurring. And today, Antonio Guterres, who's the UN's Secretary General right now, pointed out that the world is facing a nuclear danger not seen since the height of the Cold War. The way our relations are across the globe with China and with Russia are, they're frightening. And the threat to humanity is a real one. He also went on to say, today, humanity is just one misunderstanding, one miscalculation away from nuclear annihilation. We've been extraordinarily lucky so far, but luck is not a strategy, nor is it a shield from geopolitical tensions boiling over into nuclear conflict. And then he called on nations to put humanity on a new path towards a world free of nuclear weapons. So in a resolution, there's a call to action, and as I read through this, you will hear that call to action. But I think first, we probably have to have a motion.
Do you have any?
I wanted to make sure that we acknowledged her role. I didn't ask
She's
her
not
to speak.
speaking. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Sorry, I wasn't clear about that. I mean, I can motion.
If you want to make a motion. Huh?
Move to approve the resolution to declare the city of Milwaukee's opposition to nuclear weapons and urge the U.S. federal government to sign the treaty on the prohibition on nuclear weapons and take action to prevent nuclear war.
I second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the resolution to declare the city of Milwaukee's opposition to nuclear weapons and urge the U.S. federal government to sign the treaty on the prohibition on nuclear weapons and take action to prevent nuclear war. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. So would you like to read the resolution?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, declaring the City of Milwaukee's opposition to nuclear weapons and urging the U.S. federal government to sign the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and to take action to prevent nuclear war. Whereas nearly 13,865 nuclear weapons still exist in the world today and pose a significant risk to human survival. And whereas the United States was the first country to develop and use nuclear weapons in war, and whereas the United States has approximately 5,550 nuclear weapons, constituting the world's second largest arsenal of nuclear weapons, and whereas the United States is currently planning to spend at least $1.7 trillion, that was T trillion, to rebuild the U.S. nuclear weapons arsenal. And whereas these are funds that could be used for necessary programs such as education, healthcare, infrastructure, and the environment. And whereas plutonium for the bomb the United States dropped on Nagasaki was produced at the Hanford Nuclear Reservation, a site on the banks of the Columbia River in the state of Washington, that displaced area residents, affected the health of downwinders in Oregon and Washington, and caused sacred sites, villages, and fishing areas of Native American tribes to be lost. And whereas the Hanford Nuclear Reservation, upriver from Milwaukie, remains the most toxic site in the Western Hemisphere, a nuclear sacrifice zone that threatens the health and environment of our people and region. And whereas Milwaukie residents and all people have the human right to live a life free from nuclear contamination and the threat posed by the use of nuclear weapons. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, that it supports the UN's Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and calls upon the U.S. federal government to join this treaty. And be it further resolved that the City Council of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon urges the Congress of the United States to take appropriate steps to prevent nuclear war by establishing a system of checks and balances, ensuring that the President of the United States no longer has the sole and unchecked authority to launch nuclear weapons. And that the U.S. Congress renounces the option of using nuclear weapons first, to take U.S. nuclear weapons off hair trigger alert, and to cancel the plan to replace the entire U.S. nuclear arsenal with next-generation nuclear weapons, and to actively pursue a verifiable and multilateral agreement amongst nuclear-armed states to eliminate nuclear arsenals.
I wanted to thank the council president for her, for her resolution in its entirety, but also because of the embedded links in her resolution that gave us the sources for her information. I think it was really interesting reading, and it's a good model for our resolutions as a general matter to give the source material for source.
And Kelly was a great help with that.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. It would be nice if our federal government was as proactive about these things as the Milwaukie City Council.
What's your dream?
All right. Community comments. This is the part of the agenda during which council will hear community members' statements regarding city business. For those in person who wish to speak, please submit a yellow comment card found on the table just outside the door. If you're on Zoom, please use the raise hand reaction to alert staff you wish to speak. And when instructed to begin, click the microphone option to unmute yourself. If you're calling in through Zoom and would like to make a comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. You may also email comments to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. Before you make your comments, please state your name and city of residence for the record. If you would like the city to follow up with you, please submit your contact information to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. This council has other business items on the agenda this evening. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Because information provided during the community comments may be new, the city manager will respond at the next council meeting to those comments that require follow-up. Before we begin, is there follow-up from the July 19th community comment period? It's over.
There was. So we had a community member named Pat Strauss come in and talk about some frustrations they were having about storing property on their site, on their home site. We did receive a second email tonight asking for additional information from that same family, so we'll continue to work with them. It is a tricky location. It is a corner lot, and it also has multiple things on it that make it very close to the roadway. So it's just, it's not super easy. But I do appreciate that staff has been enforcing our code. We'll answer their questions and keep going. So if any of you have personal questions, you're welcome to reach out to me. And thank you to the mayor for your response.
I'm out of time into trying to figure out solutions for them. It's a tough lot to solve for. All right, anything online? Okay. Tonight's consent agenda includes the minutes of the City Council for July 12th, 2022 study session, a resolution reappointing Mary Newstetter to the Design and Landmarks Committee. That is it. Very short consent agenda. Does any member of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as written.
A second?
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. All right. League of Oregon Cities Legislative Priorities, a discussion. This will be led by our Assistant City Manager, Kelly Brooks. For, I guess, have you gone through this before?
No.
Okay, so for the two new members that have not gone through this before, LOC, which you're aware of what they are, okay. They form committees that look at a lot of different things. Kathy has served on, the same committee that I used to serve on, the Energy and Environment, what is it called? Something like that. I served it for 2 terms, and she's served it now for 2 as well, right? Or 1? 2. No, it's 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is 2. Wilda and I also served on one of the other committees at one point. So the process is we meet a handful of times, 5 or 6 times. We have experts often come speak on whatever topic is of interest. And then each committee submits votes and submits their priorities. And what we all got was the amalgam of all of that. So all the committee's priorities. The LOC then makes a decision on which priorities they're going to pursue. So there's kind of two levels. If the committee voted to do the thing, that puts it on LOC's we will support list, right? They'll testify in support, they'll do things like that. If whatever is chosen, we're getting to choose 5 this year, right? So if whatever 5, every city, and this is the interesting strategic thing to think about, progressive cities are in the minority in the LOC. So generally speaking, the LOC's priorities tend to be not super progressive because we get outvoted, I'm trying to think of the smallest city that I can think of in Eastern Oregon, but whatever that is, a town of 50 people has the exact same vote as Portland. So that's the way it plays out as far as those decisions. But those 5 things are the things that the LOC will actually put a lot of time into working on. They'll send their lobbyists in to have a conversation with legislators, all the things. So that's what this is all about. It is worth doing for whatever odds-on chance that something we care about will end up on their priority list. And it's absolutely worth serving on the committee. So something
And
to
it's,
consider.
yeah, and those committees are made up of effectively whoever wants to be on them. LOC staff does endeavor to create some balance in the leadership on a committee. So you'll often have someone who's on the east side be the chair and someone who's on the west side be the vice chair, that sort of thing. And I do feel like overall they work to make sure that the interests of all of the different cities are fairly evenly represented. But it's a good experience. It's sort of a short stint in the spring when you're called upon to do that work every 2 years.
So now that we've set that up for you,
Mayor, you did a wonderful job. I don't have a whole lot to add other than, yes, we need to pick 5. We also need to pick them tonight because it's due on Friday. So I've tried, in the staff report, I went back and grabbed the 2020 selections and the 2018 selections. I've added a little asterisk to the ones that are here again. Councilor Heisey mentioned that she's on the Energy and Environment, the subcommittee, which does have 2 of the priority bills for us in the past again. And so I have highlighted those potentially as low-hanging fruit, but it's up to you all. And with that, it really is, I have a little tally sheet. I'm just gonna kind of keep track of the ones as you all are discussing it that start to seem like you're gravitating to. If I see common themes, I will jump in and kind of point them out and say, it sounds like everyone's sort of leaning one way or the other. But other than that, it's you all, kind of the policy bonanza. You get to look at all these different policies across a broad array of things and think about what statement you want to make collectively, both back to LOC and to the legislature with your 5 choices. And that's it. If there's anything I can do along the way, I will. You can ask me questions. I will try my best to answer them. I will tell you it is a broad enough array of things that I am not an expert in all of these things by any stretch of the imagination. But if you have a question like, hey, did we really take a big hit in marijuana taxes? Does that, I'll say, no, actually I checked with Bonnie. That wasn't a big issue for us, that kind of thing.
Is that true?
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I've
I
told you
thought
the
it
one.
was a big hit for us.
Yeah. Now I've told you the one thing I know, so don't ask anymore. No.
Our revenue is like,
Well, I mean, it wasn't, yeah. I mean, as
Puny
a
to begin with.
proportion of our budget, it's not a huge
yeah, it
proportion.
just doesn't matter to us.
Yeah. So is this, I mean, I know reach code, we still
Yep.
need, but the second one, I thought we got our renewable, I thought that was the thing what was allowing us to do what we're working on with
Our green
PGE
tariff.
now, yeah, our green tariff.
No, that's different. I can go through this, or you can probably do a way better job than I can, probably off the top of your head. I would have to look and tell you why I think that's the other thing that we should,
We haven't met since April, so I'm not as fast as that.
okay.
Where is it?
Continuing investment. This would, okay, so what didn't happen in the green tariff program? Oh, man, or the HB 2021, right? That was the full bill. The work that was being done on the types of local energy generation that the east side is interested in, like using irrigation canals to generate electricity and irrigation pipes and some of those, somehow they didn't get what they needed out of that. And I don't remember now why. Do you?
It was very technical.
Let's see, there was,
It had to do with the funding mechanisms. Whenever Jennifer Jolie comes from the water districts, I know that I'm in the room with a smart person and I'm not going to remember everything because I used that knowledge for exactly 3 months out of my life. So I'm not going to pretend that I can do it justice.
so I think why it matters to us, I think the work around this might help with the concepts around
Community solar.
doing, well, not only community solar we theoretically already have, although the utilities gamed that so badly, it's not a really awesome process. No, but being able to create microgrids, I think this work would help with that, and then allow those microgrids to be functioning in the instance of a electrical outage, which is something that PGE gets. They're not super excited about because it's a lot of technical work for them. There was something else about this that I thought was important. Pursue local climate action goals.
Is it fair to say that, and I'm going to use the A, B, C, D, if you, each section either has 4 or 5 options and they're in alphabetical order. So is it fair to ask, is the reach A?
Well, we don't even know if it's going to be what it's going to be yet because that committee has not finished its work. And it depends on who you talk to on that committee, what's going to come out of it. I'm having ongoing meetings about that, and I don't have any idea, frankly, but something out of that, something dealing with building energy needs to be a priority because right now it's the one place the state really hasn't touched.
Right. Is it fair to say that that is the top priority in this section? So if you look at all the Energy and Environment Policy Committee options, A through D.
That would be mine,
The
yes.
first one has been and would likely continue to be the city's priority in alignment with the climate.
Assuming it's not a super watered down bill, yes.
Okay.
That would be our, I think.
I will just ask,
Yeah,
is
the only other one on that list on that I thought was worthy was B, continue investments in renewable energy.
And I will say that I did hear on the Energy and Environment Committee that investment for community climate planning resources and adequate funding for state climate initiatives, both of those, we have had the climate friendly areas move forward through DLCD, and it has the potential to be an unfunded mandate, effectively, where the state is saying, let's do this stuff. I think it's great stuff, but I hear the cities that are saying, this is a heavy lift, and I know that Laura and Vera are aware of how much work is going to go into that, so I don't think I'm necessarily not speaking for Milwaukie here, that it is going to take time for staff to figure out how to meet those. It's a whole huge new code package that's on the level of getting to where we're in compliance with HB 2021. So I think that that is a real need. Whether or not it is something we want to vote for, I think is a up for
Well,
discussion.
that is something that was on my list because, and I had actually reached out to staff today because I'd hoped we might get a little primer on what's coming and what that is going to mean for
little
Milwaukee. And apparently it's coming, apparently we're getting some kind of briefing in 2 weeks.
Weeks, yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I think that might be one that we
Laura,
should.
tell me if I'm way off base here. You can, and please feel free to come up, but my read of that stuff, at least the last time I read it, and I know it's been changing, was that we were already doing like 75, 85% of the stuff that's in the list. So the few little things that we're going to have to add on are not a big deal. Am I misreading that?
You are not misreading it. We're doing stuff for the housing capacity analysis. We've also already started our transportation system planning.
Right.
The only thing that we'll have to think about, I mean, it'll be several years before we're going to have another big push, not a little push. I think we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, that was my read of it. I mean, I know a lot of cities are freaking out because they haven't been doing all the stuff we've been doing, but we really set in motion all of that stuff with our vision. So we pretty much everything, we're doing it.
Okay.
And being in the metro area, the rules are different and there's some more, yeah, it's not worth going into, but we're being treated differently.
So property tax reform.
Yes.
I think we're all aware of how broken that is and how that's going to eventually come back to really bite cities. I mean, I make a point every budget report to note that were we collecting at market rate, we would have nearly twice the budget we currently have. Nearly twice.
I do have a strategic question,
Insignificant.
because that's always one of the top 5. Do we need to spend a vote there?
Yeah, that's.
I'm not saying I
Good
disagree.
question. Yeah, that's a worthy question. It's a worthy question.
And is
so.
there any reason to think it's going to
won't.
get any more of a reception this year than?
Well, actually, LOC, the mayors, metro mayors and LOC have been meeting a couple of times, or at least members of the executive committee and LOC have been meeting. There's actually going to be the beginnings of a push, and interestingly enough, several of the likely freshmen get it. They get how critical this is. So there is more interest. Now, again, the big fix is going to have to go back to the people. It's not actually something the legislature can totally fix. There are some nibbling around the edges. There's some tweaks that can be done that could be helpful, but really to solve it, we're going to have to go back to the people. And that's a PR question, not a political question. So do we need to vote for that to be, I don't know. I literally picked the 5 things that I thought were the most important to us. But if you think there's something else on there that's important to us and is less likely to get votes, then I'd be.
So that's another way, if you all want to structure the conversation, not to overstate, but if everyone has their 5, you can list off your 5 and we can see where there's alignment and where there isn't, if that helps.
It might speed up the process.
Yeah, this is going to take a long
Okay.
time.
Do you want to do that?
So do you have your 5, Desi?
Sure.
I have a list of about 10 that I have questions about. I'm not sure, but I mean, one of them relates to earlier tonight, digital equity, right? One of them relates to what we were discussing earlier tonight. And also our low-income water assistance. Is that something, is our program okay the way it is, or do we need state assistance for that?
Is this financial assistance?
Yeah.
I think we're fine. We were able to contribute to St. Vincent's. That is working. We do see families using that now that we're collecting again. So I have not heard from anyone that we're concerned about our ability to cover that cost.
I have my top 4.
Okay.
So, in the community development policy, funding to address homelessness. C, infrastructure funding to support needed housing. General government policy. D, address measure 110 shortcomings. And then we already said A, and number 6.
6A.
Say.
Those are the ones I felt strongly about.
So I just want to make sure I got those. So in community and development, we have B, local funding to address homelessness. C, infrastructure funding to support needed housing. And then in general government, we have D, which I don't have my page. But am I right about that? General government was D, address measure 110 shortcomings. And then in energy and environment, it's A. Those are yours, okay.
Kathy.
I didn't classify them as neatly as Desi did or that as you are, so you're going to have to figure it out. I had funding to address the homeless issues, whatever that was called. I had questions about the alcohol revenue one. The argument LOC makes for this is real persuasive, I gotta say.
Well, raising beer and wine tax is getting some momentum, I think, at the legislature,
I had a question about that too. I didn't.
that we're the lowest in the
Yes.
world.
Right, yeah.
The last
Because we
data.
make a lot of beer and wine, and
Yeah.
beer and winemakers have a good political lobby.
Right.
Well, and that also said that OLCC is building a new warehouse. Are they building a new warehouse in Milwaukee?
I think it's in Milwaukee.
I don't think it's here.
Oh, okay.
We're the one for the metro region.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually am interested in that one. I don't know how wildly beneficial it is for us. I know our alcohol revenues are greater than they are for other things, than for marijuana. I did feel very strongly about road user fee. That I think is one that we really should consider because, yeah, that was under transportation policy. It's on RS 30, the very top. Vehicle miles traveled structure is in many ways a more equitable way of doing it, and we just don't have ways to pay for our roads right now. And it's getting worse. And it should be, because our cars are getting more efficient and people are moving to EVs. So we need to be forward thinking about how we're paying for roads. So I would like to support that one. 1, 2, 3. And I think I had flagged the same one that you did, Lisa, around infrastructure, or maybe that was a different one. Infrastructure financing and resilience. That was on the bottom of RS 31. Advocating for an increase in the state's investment in key infrastructure funding resources, including but not limited to brownfield redevelopment, regionally significant industrial site loan programs, special public works fund, and set-asides for seismic resilience planning and related infrastructure improvements to make Oregon water and wastewater systems more resilient. And I just think about the part where we have a pretty substantial industrial area that backs onto a creek that is beloved in the metro area, and feel like this does impact Milwaukie pretty profoundly, and that it would be nice to see some headway on getting some seismic resilience work done in that area, because it's all built on silt. If you look at the earthquake maps for the region, our industrial area is not, it's not going to be pretty when the big one hits.
Well, I mean, the bigger one that we should all super care about is the tank farm there on the Willamette there at north of,
Sure,
that's,
sure.
that'll have Willamette and the Columbia on fire to the falls,
Well,
if we're lucky.
we can argue about whether or not it's going to flow upstream, but I was trying to keep it within Milwaukie bounds, my thinking. Anyway, so that's 4. And of course, the reach code, yeah.
Which I'm going to keep calling that, even though I know you told me not to.
Say again?
I'm going to keep calling it the REACH bill for shorthand. Set.
That's fine.
Okay.
Well, I'm for the reach. I also had address measure 110 shortcomings, like Counselor Nicodemus. I mean, I saw digital equity, although now that I'm searching for it, I'm not finding it again.
Oh, it's in 8B, resilient future-proof broadband infrastructure planning investment, that one.
What page?
RS
Oh, sorry.
27.
27. Oh, there we go. That's funny. I searched on the word digital and it did not come back up. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of, it's sort of a vague recommendation and a vague statement of what they would do.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's directed at urban areas.
Oh, really? You think
That's
it's a rural thing?
My read of it is it's very much about the rural
Because
areas.
the governor's already done a fair amount about
She
the
has,
rural
and the
areas.
feds are throwing a ton of money at that.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't.
Yeah. I will say my number 1 was not on here at all, which is an assault weapons ban. And, we were told by for those who were here when we had, the ballot measure did get on, IP-17 did get on the ballot.
Yeah.
But they said their strategy was if they could get IP-17, they did not include an assault weapons ban. They hoped to lobby the legislature for that. And I would love to put that on there as an ask. I would say the vehicle miles traveled, the reach code, the address measure 110 shortcomings. I also thought a lot about the state funding to localities for homelessness. The thing is, we're not, is that it's a county function here.
But they're actually asking for money to go to cities. It is.
But we don't
But
have a
it's-
department to administer a program like
No,
that.
we don't. And there was something else about that I just went, this is not.
Yeah, I felt like
not
it was
workable. I can't remember what it was.
not really
Anybody know what page that's on?
It's on
on. in the
RS
list.
22.
That's what I thought. I keep looking and not seeing it. There it is, local funding to address homelessness. Yeah.
So Councilor Rady, just so I'm tracking your list so far, I have REACH, 110 fixes, digital equity, and the road user fee. And then and potentially the local funding to address homelessness.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say that because I do feel like we're not, we don't have that function here and we don't have the capacity to add a department to do that. So maybe it's just 4. Maybe it's just 4 for me. What were I guess if
So
no, why is there no mental health things
That's what I
on
was
here?
gonna ask.
Why are there no mental health things on this list?
because
That was-
they spent, they in the last session, I'll get this wrong in the details, but in the last session, they committed a whole bunch of money to mental health they're having a hell of a time, like with Measure 110, actually getting it
Out there.
out the door. But I think that's why everybody's waiting to see how that plays.
How that plays out.
Yeah. 110, the money's there. They're just not getting it out the door. And apparently, particularly not to the metro region. They're getting it out the door in Roseburg, and they're getting it out the door in Eastern Oregon, and they're getting it out the door on the coast, but not to the Portland metro region. And everybody I've talked to can't answer the question as to why that might be.
And I guess the only other one I had a note about was the enterprise zones.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know, we have had businesses take advantage of the enterprise zones. It's been a while since any of that has come to us. I don't know if that it always necessarily comes to us.
Doesn't, once we set the program, it just happens.
Yeah.
There is some interest in sunsetting all of that.
But it says, this says it sunsets in 2025.
There's a lot of data out there that says that it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Like what it's supposed to, remember the trade-off, if I'm recalling correctly, was X number of new jobs that were good paying, good new jobs. A, no one is tracking that whatsoever. B, there's no enforcement. Nobody is looking into it, finding out, did you do it, and making you do it. And the people that are kind of in the world of there's too many government giveaways to businesses and where it's not actually doing what it's supposed to do are saying it is not a good program. So I don't have any facts to back that up, but I do know that they're not keeping track, at least that anybody can put their hands on. So Adam, what are your 5?
Well, since mental health is there, I do have homelessness funding, infrastructure funding for needed housing, economic development incentives. Oh, sorry. Do I need to slow down?
No, hold on. Your economic development incentives, that one I do need. Which one? Where
That's
is
finance and tax.
D. Yep, so that is the enterprise zones ones.
That's
right?
the enterprise zones, yeah.
Yep.
So how many is that? 3? Property tax reform. But if that's Kathy got me thinking about that one because it's been on every year. Obviously the REACH code. But if I was to take off property tax, I'd put infrastructure financing resilience. But the tax code really does need to be fixed.
It does, but
Okay.
it is always on a priority for LFC.
Okay, can I read, Counselor White, can I read yours
Yes,
back?
yes, please.
Okay, local funding to address homelessness, infrastructure funding to support needed housing, the enterprise zone one, so the economic development incentives, property tax reform, but if that falls off, it would change to infrastructure finance and the REACH code.
Yes,
Are
ma'am.
yours? Okay. Great. Okay, Mayor.
Okay, so I have the building decarbonization, the REACH code, continued investments in renewable energy, property tax reform, transportation safety enhancements. So that's more funds that would go towards our SAFE program. It's also more, there was something else about that, and I'm trying to remember. And then the VMT one.
The road user?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
What page is that on?
RS 29 is the safety enhancement. Is that what you were looking for?
Yep, thank you.
So transportation safety enhancements, if you read it, it sounds like it's all about cameras.
No, that's just one of the things.
Well, and speed limits.
We get to set our own speed limits. We get to use the cameras. Right now, that's all, only Portland can do that.
I thought we already, didn't we?
I thought we got that fixed. I thought we got that too.
It is,
We did not.
I read this. That's confusing. Sorry. So I believe it's telling you that we did get authority to set speeds on local streets. I believe that it's still, we still can't set speeds on like state highways, but for local streets, we can now set it. So I think it's just telling you that that did occur, but what we did not get is the extending fixed photo radar outside of the city of Portland to make that more permissible and something that we could use. That this legislation would facilitate fixed photo radar.
The speed thing that we got was 5 mile an hour max change. Am I misremembering that, planners?
No, that's it, but I don't think you're seeing anything more than that. I think they're recapping, at least the summary, the way I'm reading it, it's recapping that we got that legislation last time. That now, if it's not on a state highway, we, within 5 miles, can do it ourselves. I don't see an additional policy, like, proposal here, unless I'm misreading it.
Well, and then increased investments in the safe routes to schools and expansion of the Great Streets program. That's in the opening paragraph. That's the last line.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I see, yeah.
It's really poorly
It's
written.
very poorly written. And the Great Streets program, you all familiar with?
It's a very new program.
It is pretty new. It's basically what we're doing, but if there's funds that would go with it, again, that's funds that could go to, our SAFE program with our bonding is funded up to a point. We have to get grants for a bunch of it. These are the kinds of funds that could go into those grants. So that was why I included.
Okay, I see where I got it wrong. So it's, what you're talking about, Mayor, are the provisions that would be included in what was HB 2019 last session, which is the high crash corridor for City of Unity. It's also a really not helpful title. So I will look up what that is, but I'm guessing that's what you're referring to in terms of additional funding to support safe infrastructure is what was HB 2019 last time.
Potentially. I have a hard time remembering the numbers.
Okay, I can look, that's something I can look up while y'all are talking to see what HB 2019 was.
Okay.
Okay, but before I do that, you had REACH, continued investments in renewable, which was the second one down.
Right.
Property tax reform, transportation safety enhancements is what we're talking about, and the road user fee.
Yeah.
Okay.
So on measure 110, like I said, the big problem with that, as near as I have been able to understand by talking to both the advocates and people at the state, is it's just they're failing to fund it. They're failing to fund it, particularly in the metro region. And the people at the state will tell you it's coming. We're going to get it out. It's happening. It's going to come. So I don't know if the LOC yelling at them about it is going to change much there. I think we kind of have to wait and see once the funds are out. Is it then good enough? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? Or does it need further revisions? Because right now, it's not working at all. We're not seeing, other than people aren't getting arrested for it, right? That half's working. But the half where they get any kind of care, that's totally not working. But it's theoretically coming, so.
Well, I looked up some articles today. Our overdose rates have risen 33% in Oregon in the last year, and there were a lot of raises. There were a lot of increases everywhere sort of during COVID, but that's about twice the national average.
So there's a couple of things going on there. One, Portugal experienced a bump and then it started to come down. Of course, they rolled out the CARE program part that we are not rolling out quickly and very efficiently, and they have universal health care. So that portion of the care that may not be affected by Measure 110 is not existent in our state. So we're not apples to apples with Portugal, but the point is they spiked and then went down. So that's one piece. Secondly, there is apparently a new opioid.
Fentanyl.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
no, not
that
beyond
new.
fentanyl. There's some newer, some other more bad, or new meth. There's some new drug. Is it new meth? Okay. There's a new meth out there that's really bad. So we're getting the first hits of some more bad new drugs. The real crux of that is that we have to fix the part where they're not getting the care out. Yeah. So I don't know anything that the LOC would do with the legislature that's going to change much at this point on that one. Because I agree. I mean, that's the mayor's, we just had people come in to meet with the Metro mayors to explain to us what the hell's going on, because we're all in the same place. We're like, it's not happening. What were some of the other ones? I wrote down letters and numbers.
Do you want to give us a vote tally?
Trying.
Yeah, if there's ones where we have 4 people saying yay, let's just call that
Okay, everybody has reach,
everybody has reach. Okay.
right?
6A.
I have 3 people, I have 3 votes for local funding to address homelessness. Is that popped up on Kathy, Desi, and Adam's list? I have,
I think you have at least 3 on the vehicle mile.
yep, I have Lisa on road user fee, Mark on road user fee,
Kathy?
Kathy on road user fee. So you have 3 on road user fee. 3 on local funding to address homelessness. And you have all 5 of you on reach. Let me see if there's another 3. There might be 3 on 110. I have Desi supporting measured 110 shortcomings. I have Lisa. Did anybody else have that one? I don't see it.
Adam said it. Did you say one time? No. So 2. So the local money for homelessness, did you, staff, did you look through this, and do you have thoughts of how we could apply that, even though we are not the service provider in this area? Are there things we could be doing with that funding that would make a significant difference?
I'll know in a month. Unfortunately, I'm just not at the point. I mean, in time for the legislature, I think we'll be meeting with, so just so everyone knows, we're meeting with Central City Concerns, One Love, the county, a number of staff actually at the county, trying to figure out how we can insert these 2 positions that we've been talking about and do some additional code changes, and then change the way we're providing services in town. I can't give you an answer until we're in November. So I don't think it works for this discussion, but I can make a commitment to you all that when we come back in September and October, that we'll have a better sense for if those funds could help us provide service here.
Well, and I'll just add that my thinking about this was anytime you can get those services provided, say Lake Oswego does have the capacity, certainly the city of Portland has that capacity, then you're reducing the amount of pressure on the services being provided by Clackamas County to our houseless population in need, effectively. More money to address houselessness is more money to address houselessness. It is a crisis that covers the whole region. I'm not so concerned about whether or not we're getting the money as I am about whether or not the money is coming in to help people who desperately need help.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think you have some cities in particular that are non-traditional providers, but are seeing a significant issue. Salem, Eugene, communities where we don't typically think of having a large population, but it's really impacting the individuals who are going through that experience in those towns as well as the towns themselves. So I think I actually would fully support it. I just don't know if the city of Milwaukee can use the funds.
Yeah, I'm happy to have that. I don't know which one I dropped, but I'm happy to pick that one up as well. I mean, my initial response was well, that's not a service we provide, so I don't know what good it's going to do us. But I mean, there probably are going to be ways that we do end up with these two staffers doing what we hope they'll be doing. That might be a way.
Yeah, and I think even beyond that, we're going to be working with nonprofits who are currently receiving a lot of these funds. So Central City Concern getting more money, or Amy Jo getting more money for on-site care, that's a benefit to us, whether or not we provide the service.
Okay.
So I do think, I've been highly impressed by the nonprofits that work in the community around this issue, and I think that they use their dollars well, and I think this could be a really good and helpful way to help people.
I will highlight, I have 2 for property tax reform. So, if anybody wants to jump on the property tax reform?
I will jump on the transportation, the road user fee.
Ooh, woohoo, all right. I'm gonna add road user fee.
I'm actually excited that that's got play at LOC. Because 4 years ago, when I was on those committees, they looked at me like I was speaking German or something. All right, so that makes us, that's the REACH,
Road user.
BMT,
Right.
homelessness.
Yeah, we've got 3.
We're at 4 on all those, right?
Yeah, we have 3. Yeah, I would say those 3 are a lock with 4 votes in support. So you need to fill your other 2 spots.
I didn't mean to muddy the waters with the property tax comment I made earlier. If we don't have to struggle to not use it.
No, I mean, I think you're right. I think that's going to hit the top of the list. So if we think that our nudge might push something else in, I'm fine not voting on that. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody's going to go back and go, I'm testifying that we need to do something and go, wait, you guys didn't vote to do that.
All right.
And it just sounds like if it's something that's repeatedly on there, there's not much movement, but then maybe we can do something else in the infrastructure part of cities, to help. If they're not willing to do that.
The other place we have 2 votes on the infrastructure funding to support needed housing. So community development C. So the one right underneath houseless services.
Yeah.
We have 2 votes for that.
So how would that play out? Let's think about how that would play out for us. Planners, feel free to weigh in.
It's such
Trying to bring the
broad
planners up.
concept. It sounds like they're wanting to create a pot of money that would help pay SDC funds when I read it,
Right.
which is fine. That sounds great. Let's do it.
Or pay the, the frontage improvements,
Yeah.
Yeah. The, what you need to connect, connect up new housing.
It feels like it would complement CET.
Compliment what?
CET.
It would. So the other piece that I think about when I look at these is if what we're saying is, please give us more money, right? The legislature is just like, and where would you like this magic pot of money to come
Yeah.
from?
Yeah.
So I usually try and pick things that doesn't require them to say that or figure out the answer to that. But it's still something that helps us. That's why the REACH code thing was really a big deal, right? Because they don't have to come up with any money for that.
Yep.
It's just something we can do that reduces our carbon footprint. I think the VMT is kind of the same way. It's actually the opposite of that because that should be a bigger source of funds for something that we desperately need funds for. Just FYI, that's part of how I,
So I'm just going to point out that Councilor Beatty's in a powerful position right now because you have an unused lot. You could throw towards any of the two or more and put it over the top. We also have an offer from Councilor Khajavati to change his vote from property tax to infrastructure finance. So if there's a collective, if there's support for infrastructure finance, you would have 3 votes for that.
Who's there on that right now?
2. Well, you are if we don't get property tax, so you're an if, and then Councilor Heisey.
Yeah, switch me to the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's property tax.
I should say Council President Heisey. I've been referring to you poorly wrong all night. Okay.
I mean, I feel like we don't have all the information. We really need to be doing this. Like, I would like to know more about enterprise zones. I would like to know more a little bit about some of the business support, because that is something we haven't done as a city that well. And so I would like to, I would like to think about those a little bit more. But since we have to do this tonight, yeah. I mean, I'm okay with the infrastructure funds. That's okay with me. But I would like us to have a discussion at some point about enterprise zones and whether,
well, I think we should reach out. Is it the county that controls that?
It is, yes.
I think we should reach out and see if they've got data. What has it affected? How many jobs came in? What are those people paid?
Yeah, and I think that Joseph probably has some opinions on this. He is here if we want to ask him.
Yeah, please.
Joseph, you want to jump on? Hi.
Good evening.
Any thoughts on the E-zone stuff?
Well, I do think it's important economic development tool. I don't know how well it's been utilized yet in Milwaukie, so that's certainly something worth talking to the county about. But there just really aren't many tools available to our industrial and commercial users. So any way of extending it and keeping it alive, I think is well worth the effort, in my opinion.
Mayor, we can go back and ask them what the user rate is, both inside the city and Clackamas County, and then what the tracking has been around jobs. I do think the last couple of years are going to be a little complicated. So I would just be cautious, because I do know that there were discussions about these types of programs basically going on a hiatus for their reporting requirements for a couple of years, just because COVID threw everything into a loop. But they should have some older data, and we can pull that.
Yeah, I mean, that seems fair to me.
Is that okay, Joseph?
2019, 2018.
Sure, yeah.
I'm happy to follow up to the council and if you're
That'd
cool
be
with that.
awesome. Thank you.
Can I ask one clarifying thing? And I apologize. I was saying infrastructure, and we talked about 2 different infrastructure funds. So I just want to make sure that that I have people's votes in the right place. So there was the infrastructure funding to support needed housing. So that's the CET complement version. I had both Desi and Adam already in support on that one. And then there was the Infrastructure and Resiliency Fund, which Council President Heisey mentioned, which is more about earthquake preparedness and, potential resources for the dam and that kind of thing.
And brownfields.
In brownfields. Which one, Councilor Beatty, did you want added?
I see value to both of them, but I guess I do feel like there's so much going on in the community, in the last several years with, Metro bond measures and blah, 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 that it is the resiliency one that I feel like gets less attention and probably needs the attention. So I would put my vote there.
Okay. So that's the one I currently have on the next one down. So I have REACH, road user fees, local funding to address homelessness, and then the infrastructure finance and resiliency is currently the 4th, based on the fact that there's 3 of you supporting that one. Okay. Do you want to hold? Do you want to just have 4 and then maybe add the 5th as enterprise zones if you get compelling information? Or do you want to The mayor says no.
Have to submit it by
Yeah,
Friday.
Okay.
Well, I guess I have a question. Maybe Joseph can help. The fact that it's not being utilized as well in the county, is that because the county's not pushing it out there as much, or people aren't, the public's not taking advantage of that? I mean, what exactly is, do we know? Not exactly.
I know this much. I know this much, and I'll tell it. So the woman who manages this for the county is a wonderful person who I think works quite hard. Her name's Cindy, right? Her name's Cindy. She has reached out at times when like there was a potential extension that we could do around COVID. Like I think by all accounts, she appears to be quite good at her job and does track and keep, track of things. Now, what I can't tell you today is how much benefit that has brought the city in terms of the jobs that have been created from that zone. I know we have them. I know if it extended, we would benefit from that extension insofar as we have this tool and it would allow us to continue using it. But that's about as much detail as I can give you today.
Basically, the way it works, and please correct me if I'm wrong, as I often am, is that it reduces their property tax hit on an investment. So let's say they put in, let's say PCC puts in a whole new line, right? They're now going to smelt some new metal they've never smelted before, and they're going to produce parts for other things. And it's a huge investment. It's, call it a $50 million investment. There would be property taxes on that property that is now part of,
Right.
which are reduced for, 10 years, 8 years?
3 to 5 in urban areas.
It's 3 to 5, okay.
Yeah.
And in return for that, they're supposed to hire X number of new people who are paid a living wage. It can't just be minimum wage workers. I think there's some caveat in there that it has to be above.
Pay employees at least 150% of the state minimum wage.
Ooh, look at that. Good job.
And then there's also an annual county average wage for 5 year.
So that's what that is. The impression I've gotten is that that's typically not a make or break conversation for these people. If they're thinking about putting in a new line at PCC, it's because they have the demand for it. And they're going to do it one way or the other. This is just makes it cheaper for them.
But I will say that we've had one enterprise zone application that came in since I've been on council, and it was a battery maker. Somebody might remember this, in Milwaukie, who said, actually, yeah, this would really help me. And they were doing really cool new battery technology. I think you may remember. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I remember them.
And he said, absolutely, we can. Yes, we are going to deliver these jobs because the kind of technology we need to put in requires people who have education levels at, where of course you would pay them that amount of money. So I think there is an argument to be made for enterprise zones fueling some of the kinds of development and technology that we really want to see, and encouraging smaller businesses to really invest in the community and get bigger and making that possible. So I agree that the PCC example, I'm not interested in PCC benefiting necessarily. There could be a very good argument, but I don't want to lose sight of those smaller businesses.
Right. See, and that's kind of where I was thinking is like, this is basically another incentive to bring a green economy to Milwaukie, potentially.
Right.
If we want to bring more green industries and commercial production here, then that's one way that we can do that.
Yeah.
Well, and it can help a restaurant, putting in commercial kitchens is insanely expensive, particularly if the building wasn't prepared for it in the first place. Joseph, you had something.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to say in my experience too is I've been working with businesses in my last job, having them transition from a city or county or area that had an enterprise zone to a city or county or part of the county area that didn't have an enterprise zone. It was a disincentive, and they were actually upset to find that out after they had purchased the property. So, I mean, it is a competitive thing too, as far as for folks looking for a place to call home or a new home, relocation. So I haven't seen that.
Well, and I guess, sort of the corollary to that, and I wouldn't expect you to, know cases in Milwaukie, but I mean, there could be cases where it keeps somebody in Milwaukee, right? Keeps somebody from going somewhere else. Yeah.
So I'm very sorry to do this, but I think, way over time. And I believe our wonderful staff in the back of the room have
Lots to talk
block of wonderful things that you're not going to want to short. So are we getting to consensus around the E-zone? I think, yeah. Is that what we're hearing fall into that fifth spot?
Sure.
So not supporting our SAFE program. That is off the table at this point.
Well, you're also not doing the Measure 110 thing, so.
Yeah.
That was the other one that had two.
I think for what we are currently doing as a city, the transportation safety enhancements one is more relevant than almost any of them, except maybe the building decarbonization, depending on how that plays out. Just because we're investing a lot of money in that, and we still have to find a bunch of it. Like, what, 30 million? Aren't we needing about 30 million in grants?
But aren't there also going to be grants out of the federal infrastructure bill that's going to come through Metro and
That's the theory.
money for that, and even
there.
Oregon's transportation bill of however many years ago it was.
One of our NDAs landed one of those federal Safe Routes to Schools grants. So the money is really there. I guess the thing that bothers me about that transportation safety enhancement one is that when you read the background, there's absolutely bupkis about Safe Routes to Schools. It's mentioned in the italics up above, but it feels to me like it's really about photo radar and then this confusing, poorly written paragraph that even after Kelly tried to parse it out, I'm still not sure I follow. So I don't have confidence that there's a lot of clarity from LOC on what they're going to do with this.
I have a potential solution, maybe. If it creates money for us to help fill out the budgets of our CIP projects, we should support it as it's moving through the process, like most definitely, right? Because that would have a direct impact. So if, I don't know how, I mean, you all would have a better sense of how our vote might change whether or not this is one of the top 5 priorities. But because you vote today on it not to be a top priority does not mean that it might not end up being something that you all think as a council is something we need to weigh on as it moves throughout the process, because it actually can provide financial benefit to us. So you might be able to do it anyway, even if you don't vote to include it in your 5.
Yeah.
And it's, again, the question is just weighing which is more valuable to the city. Those two things.
I mean, if it's not just about fixed photo radar along high crash corridors, like I suspect it is, we barely have any high crash corridors in Milwaukee right now. So it really wouldn't do much for us.
And our police have presented that they don't really think fixed photo is that good a tool.
Right.
So they're not that interested in it anyway.
Right. Maybe it's just I'm getting hung up in the wording and I'm skeptical.
Dams aren't good, dude.
No, we did a bunch, we actually pulled in one of the companies and did a test site, a couple of locations on 224 to look at what would happen if we did put cameras in. Most of the stops were right-hand turns. That we would end up ticketing if we were going to ticket any of them, just because those were the majority of the issues. And we do those on a random basis anyway, just because sometimes, even a slight roll was what they were catching, and it just wasn't the highest priority of the department. So I think that Councilor Beatty is correct. I don't think that it was a specific. One of the issues that would be really helpful would be, of course, a mobile unit that doesn't have to be human. But that is not on the table.
Right. I want to see what you're seeing in this. I just don't. If I'm wrong, yes, absolutely. I agree, Kelly. If we suddenly get some intelligence that this is way more about safe routes to schools, then I'm all for it.
Photo radar.
Well, and a couple of things, just to go back to what Kelly said before, which is that we are going to, this last year, we decided that we would pay the additional money to help with the offset of the lobbyists through the mayor's consortium. That'll be a part of our discussions this year when we go to the legislature during the session. So there will be a little bit of support behind us when we start making decisions based on actual legislation that comes out. This is a policy discussion about where you want LOC to go more than anything. Where do you want LOC to be focusing? And I'm not sure. I would agree with Kelly that at this point we're well over our time limit.
Okay. So what do you have 5? Okay.
Do you want to know what they are?
Maybe not.
No.
Just move on. Do I have your authority to submit them?
Yes.
Great.
Go for it.
Thank you all very much for the discussion. I appreciate it.
All right. Where is my neighborhood hubs project? Do you want to do that one first, or do you care?
Do the hub so we can get these guys up here.
Okay, let's do neighborhood hubs. That'll be presented by our senior planner, Vera Colias, and associate planner, Adam Hero. I know the entire plan. This will be presented by the entire planning staff.
3/5.
Well, and the reason that we have so many people here tonight is because, this project was done when we weren't here. Vera was here, but she didn't work on it. So we had to kind of do a deep dive into understanding what had been done, what had been shared. And so then we got into it and we really went into a deep dive on the neighborhood hubs report, and then started thinking about what it did, what it accomplished, and what outreach was done, and then what maybe it didn't accomplish and what people we didn't talk to. So that's what we've been kind of setting up this new program to build upon all the work that's been done in the past. We honor that work, great work, and there's been a ton of outreach, and she's really useful, but now we're trying to take it to the next level of implementation. So we've been working on it along with community development. Joseph and Janine have also been on it and working on it because there's a big component of an economic development program that's in this. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Vera and Adam. And Adam, you all have not met Adam. He is our new associate planner here. So he's been digging really deep into this report. So he actually knows a lot about the work that was done before. So thank you for having us tonight. I didn't say that at the beginning, so I'm going to say it now. Thank you for your time and attention. Appreciate it. Go for it.
I feel like I can skip a few slides now after that
sorry.
wonderful introduction. No, that's a good thing. Evening, everybody. It's been a bit since I've been here, so it's nice to be back. Thank you. Okay, let's dive into this. All right. So we're here to talk about the Neighborhood Hubs project and what we're doing next. Milwaukie community members created the vision for the Neighborhood Hubs during the 2017 community vision process. And since then, cities explore strategies to make the community vision a reality, ultimately incorporating neighborhood hubs into the comprehensive plan that we passed in 2020. So at the time that this project, and as Laura mentioned, current staff didn't work on this project. So we're trying to just sort of bring this up to speed, but we really want to focus on what we're doing next. And that's where I'm going to have Adam talk to you about that. But at the time, staff worked with a consultant to develop the report that was attached to your staff report. We also Adam put together an executive summary to kind of smush that down into a couple, 3 pages. And what that does is it creates a framework for how hubs can grow over time. And proposes some potential pathways forward to getting those implemented. And the framework of the report is sort of the first few slides of this presentation, and then we'll jump to next steps. City Council directed staff to begin the next phase of neighborhood hubs after phase 1 of the comp plan implementation, so all the housing stuff and the tree code. So we've moved on, so now we're into the hubs section. So again, as Laura mentioned, we're using that 2020 report as a jumping off point for the next part of this project. And you can see here, as summarized on the slide, there was a lot of community engagement that was done before the report was put together, but as part of that process, including surveys, hubs being identified, lots of NDA meetings, a lot of support over this hubs concept or this idea.
So I thought that 2020 date was interesting because that's after the comp plan, right? The comp plan was a couple months before that in 2020.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Councilor Beatty. The comp plan was adopted in August of 2020.
Okay.
And the report is dated 2020. It was actually in the early summer of 2020 was when the report itself was finished, but it never came up because we were focused on the comprehensive plan piece. And so the actual vetting or the presentation of the report didn't happen. So
Right, well, I was going to say, during the CPAC process, not the CPIC process, but the CPAC process, which the mayor and I were on, there was a presentation on it to the CPAC.
Yeah.
And so that would have been 2019, I guess. And I think there was a recognition that there were too many variables and too many things to, that it needed to be tabled till the comp plan. Yeah.
And here we are. We're untabling it, and now we're moving forward with it. So the report was intended to address a series of questions, the first of which is, what is a neighborhood hub, or what are neighborhood hubs? So they're gathering places where residents have easy access to goods and services close to their homes. So they're intended to be basically walkable, bikeable areas in our neighborhoods, where neighbors create meaningful relationships with each other. So they're gathering places, they're places where there's some economic activity, they're places for folks to go besides their homes or their properties. Another question, and again, this map is in the report. The next question was, well, where could these hubs be located? The report identified 13 potential hubs across the city. And again, this map was included in your packet. Most of the hubs were identified around existing areas of something is happening. Either there's a little corner store or there's something already happening there for the most part. So this is where they were identified as part of this overall process where the various NDAs and all of these folks were participating in the project. And you can see that they're fairly well dispersed throughout the city. There are different kinds of hubs. And again, this is summarized in the report as well. So we have different types of hubs. We have opportunity sites, an underperforming hub that's there, but it could be more. Micro hub, tiny, small little space where almost like a pop-up kind of location. Transitional hub, where something's sort of going from something into something more, and it's sort of on that cusp. And then we have the neighborhood hub and the mixed use hub, and these ones are the more established kinds of hubs. No two hubs are exactly alike. They have basically similar characteristics. They're not the same size or scale. They don't have the same existing uses, but they do share some similarities. And growth of those hubs depends on several things: the economy, zoning, availability of land, community support. So they really are pretty neighborhood specific in a lot of ways about what's there and sort of what's going on around them. Hubs will develop over time. And so this chart is is part of the report as well. And as part of the project, each hub was assigned an existing type, or we're calling them types, not typology. It's a very kind of jargony kind of term. So what kind of a hub is it now? What might it be in the short term? And is for the purposes of the report and what we're talking about, it's really more 5 to 7 year kind of window. Short term is a little bit longer than we might think, but this is land use, this is economic development. It doesn't happen overnight. And then what might it be over the long haul in that 7 to 10, even 15-year time frame? All but 2 of the hubs have the potential to develop into fully functioning or sort of fully realized neighborhood hubs. A couple of them, the Hector Campbell 3 hub and then the Lake Road 2 hub were thought to be sort of over the long term. They're going to be a micro hub. It's a gathering space. It's sort of it's not something that has a lot of businesses and all kinds of things happening. It's a smaller space intended more as a gathering type of or pop-up kind of personality for those hubs. And then as part of the overall project, Johnson Economics did sort of a pass over identifying and analyzing all of the hubs, and identified the hubs that they thought were most likely to develop over those 7 to 10 years. And those hubs are identified here in the yellow circles. And that analysis that they used talked about or thought about rental apartment market rates and vacancy trends as part of their analysis. They looked at retail commercial rents and vacancy trends, growth in demand for different types of goods and services in the city and in the region. They looked at household density, growth in households, median income, and employment density. So it was a very economic centric kind of analysis about which ones are likely to evolve a bit more over time and what they might consider sort of the shorter term in the sort of evolution of all of these hubs. So that was part of their analysis. And then the final question that the report wanted to look at was what can the city do to help facilitate these hubs realizing their full potential. And there were a couple of different sort of categories. There's zoning and development code, like making sure that our code allows for the things that we want to see. And so zoning, parking requirements are part of that. What does the zone allow for permitted uses? Is there a way to look at, temporary uses? Is there a way to kind of start kickstarting some of these things? And is there a process for expanding that? I mean, if we're using zones as a way of doing that, how do we kind of figure out how we might incorporate or allow for them to expand over time? And then there's a different bucket of things that we can do, which is the program support. And that's the economic development aspect. That's what Joseph and Janine are helping us with as part of this process. What can we be doing from the programming standpoint? Are there public investments that we could be making? Is there a grant or loan program for small businesses? That kind of thing. Seed funding, promoting public events, promoting things like this to help folks get started on their businesses. So what we're looking to do now is building on kind of this piece of it. What can we be doing? Where do folks want these hubs to be? What do they want them to be? And then move that into strategies for implementation. And that's what we want to talk to you folks about because we've developed what we think is a solid approach for moving this forward. And so we want to bounce that off of you and see if you think that's a good idea and if we can start moving forward. And so I'm going to have Adam talk more about that. And I advance the slides as you tell me if that's okay.
Yeah.
I was going to take a pause for a second. Did you all have any questions about the report itself? No. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that was the case. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the reminder.
I always pause. I'm always trying to pause.
Yes.
Sorry.
I don't. I just blast through.
Excellent report. As contrasted by an earlier report this evening.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm here to talk you through our proposed approach. And I think with each slide that we finish on, hopefully it'll open up the space to talk about those items on the slide to kind of keep a good flow. Don't want to make you hold all your questions till the end. So these are the buckets that we have kind of put these various implementation pieces into. So, we're building on work that's been done before, as we've mentioned several times, and we can go to the next one. First being here, hub refinement. So we want to revisit and update the hub boundaries based on changing conditions. At least one hub has like a proposed development in it. So there's some things that are already happening in some of these locations. And there's a lot of, sidewalks and street improvements and things like that have been happening. So there's been a bit of a change at some of the sites. So really wanting to make sure that those boundaries that are proposed are accurate and appropriate. And then consider consolidating the hub types. We showed 6 on the screen here. There are more. And we think there could be some simplicity in kind of like narrowing those down and revising those. And then also third, prioritizing the hubs, not solely on the market factors that were identified in the Johnson report and going beyond that to look at things like placemaking and community support for the hubs when we prioritize, which hubs we're going to take action on first. So I will pause here for any questions that you might have about these particular items. Yeah.
I would just add, I was really struck going through this this report by how much we've learned from having equity, inclusion, and justice as a goal in just 2 short years. And it kind of made me want to turn a number of these things on their heads because the question that is never addressed in here is who is benefiting? And I would love to see us answer that question and perhaps think about how we prioritize benefiting the people who most need some benefit in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for pointing that out. We've had that discussion very much internally, and that's why we tried to capture it a little bit in kind of the next steps. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the outreach was 2018, 19. We've had this changing world since then, and I think there's a lot of things are definitely at the forefront now, and we have different people working on stuff. So that definitely resonates, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I was also curious about revisiting and updating hub boundaries on if you're also going to look for places where there might be entirely new opportunities. For example, we have mixed-use development coming in, ground level on Hillside on 32nd, just down the street from another identified hub location. And that makes me wonder, should we be adding that? Should it replace the other hub? Are there opportunities there that we could explore, particularly given that it is well situated to address the question I just raised?
I mean, I think that's a great question.
Yeah.
We haven't, I don't know that we've
Good question.
had any position on that, but
In some ways, this is like a third iteration of conversations we've had, like starting 8 years ago. And at one point, the 32nd Avenue one was a long, skinny version that went from Hillside down to where there are commercial or recently ex-commercial buildings. And all of that was the hub. So I think that's a relevant question.
It's also within the urban renewal area and therefore could benefit from investments in a near-term way.
But I mean, I think that, so in 2014, we did code to create what we called the neighborhood mixed use, right? Which at the time, we didn't call it hubs, we called it neighborhood main streets. But that was 32nd and then the 42nd around King Road. Well, so other than, one building that went through planning commission and is not apparently being built, we haven't had anything happen there in 8 years. So I do think we have to think about that as a cautionary tale about how ambitious or how we think about these hubs as you're looking at refining them, because, it is slow. And I guess I was always concerned that 13 was too many, frankly. I always thought that like that 5, 6, I'm afraid that we create expectations for people, even though the report says all good things about how it's private property and the city's, it's going to be an iterative process and da-da-da. I do think, we create some expectations by designating so many hubs. So I hope I hope you guys will think about that in this hub refinement activity.
That's a really good point. We've had that conversation many times ourselves, really trying to identify what might actually happen and focusing our energies there in a very limited number of hubs, whether it's 5 hubs or 7 hubs or it's 3 hubs, whatever that is over a 5-year period, and then kind of doing it in tiers so that there's something, some of them are in the background. But then of course, if opportunity arises, that we have code in place, we have things that are there that could make these things happen, but really putting some energy into a very specific, limited number of hubs.
Well, the one thing I liked in this report that I didn't remember from the previous iteration was this idea of a code that just allowed sort of pop-ups and food carts and, I like that. And I like, creating more flexibility to do that in more places than necessarily calling it a hub and creating some expectation of something that's longer term or more permanent that's going to happen there.
Yeah.
For me, the sort of non-development rather than a cautionary tale is it makes me say, so what didn't we do? What didn't we do that we could have done that would have caused, 32nd is probably the canary in the coal mine or the perfect opportunity, because it was at some point in the history of Milwaukee, it was a neighborhood hub, and there were 4, 5, 6 commercial buildings there. And there is a coffee shop, right? So there's the keystone, if you will, for a neighborhood hub exists. So what didn't we do to cause more of that? Because I think there's still 1 or 2 buildings that aren't even being used for anything. So was our zoning not open enough? Does it need some kind of investment? Does it need, what didn't happen?
I think in general, the hub is narrow, the boundary of the hub is narrow. There are a lot of existing single detached homes in the hub, so just converting, people are living there right now, right? So converting that into a commercial property is difficult because they're already being used. Parking requirements are something that off-street parking requirements are limiting. Those lots are small. And so, even the existing coffee shop that everyone loves, there's no parking on that site, so I think there are a couple of things. Part of what we are going to talk about, or what Adam will talk about, is sort of the code audit that we want to have done as part of this, trying to figure out where is the code relative to what we want to have happen in these places, and where are the gaps. The 32nd and Olson, that development, got all of its approvals, permits were in, there were drawings, and we reviewed permits. And then COVID happened and the construction costs went through the roof. And so a lot of things happened right at the perfectly wrong time for the actual construction of that development. So, because they had their approvals, ready to go. So I think, that development was able to kind of figure out how to work with the code and even provide the off-street parking, all of it, because the site's big enough, it's 10,000 square feet. So and it's a corner, and anyway.
I was say, in commercial areas with some houses mixed in, that can work. That's what Mississippi Avenue is. There's little houses still in there among the.
For sure. I'm not suggesting that's not. I think it's kind of just, some of those buildings are just being used for what they're using now, and it works, for the landlord. Sometimes it takes time for things to flip over. But I'm hoping the code audit will help identify some key things that we might be able to just tweak, just to kind of get us over the hump, kind of like that gap financing. What's that little thing that we're missing in the code to let stuff work?
Thinking about parking, the concept, the intent behind this from the get-go was 20-minute neighborhoods.
Right.
Right. It's the idea of creating a neighborhood where you don't have to get in your damn car to go get a cup of coffee or a nice breakfast or a book or whatever. And so I want us to keep that in mind as we are thinking about parking requirements and parking needs and all of those things. 32nd is particularly weird because it's such a narrow right-of-way and it's such a busy street relatively for the narrow right-of-way. But I would want us to be careful about, again, over-parking.
Well, and I
don't need to tell me that.
Right. And I think the climate-friendly, equitable communities work is going to partially fix that problem for us.
Absolutely.
There's tons of parking there now. I went by the other day and that whole lot was full.
You mean cars that were parked on the cleared lot to go to Milwaukie Cafe?
Adaptive reuse example.
I just want to add on the mayor's, what did we not do? I think there's also a conversation to be had specifically with Milwaukie Garden and Floral and Kelly Keener, because that is identified in the study as maybe someday. And what they have done, it's thriving. They are doing the pop-ups. There's a food cart that has just moved there permanently. It is becoming a neighborhood hub with no action on the part of the city. And I'm very curious to learn some lessons from them about what worked, how could we support them, yada, yada. Because it's a really cool, and that happened during COVID. It's truly remarkable that was able to transpire. So.
Yeah, and that's a residential zone too for that property. So and then the NMU on 32nd, there's like someone who maybe wants to open a food cart in their front yard, and it technically allows for. So we're starting to see these things emerge more and more. It seems like.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the things we've learned from the pandemic is that craving for community is being suppressed in some ways that are well-intentioned. Food poisoning is a thing. There's a reason we have OSHA rules. All of that stuff is real. But maybe we need to think about how we can foster those instead of crush them out of existence.
We're seeing that more things are okay. Yeah. Because they just happened. And
Yeah.
it's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Pandemic did some good things.
Yes.
Right.
Do you mind if I just state one thing before you jump back into it? Just wanted to piggyback on what Council President Heidi just said. There is something to say, and we've also had this discussion too about having identified hubs, and then also a big part of unlocking the potential of any property is the property owner. It's his or herself or their self. So it's when you have a property owner that's willing and ready to take on whatever new idea like this, that's a low barrier to make it happen. So I think that's kind of part of our conversations have been, do we elevate those properties as a priority versus other ones because of that? So Milwaukie, Florida is definitely a great example of that.
Right. So when we first did outreach for this project, and as by we, I mean, previous sort of staff and consultant team did a ton of outreach, but did not collect demographic data. So, or at least we don't have it if it was collected, but it doesn't seem like it was. So this time we really want to focus engagement with people of color, renters, immigrants, and those with disabilities to ensure their participation in it, and also to ensure that the hubs are meeting their needs as far as our policies go. We want to explore how the neighborhood needs have changed since the pandemic. It's really a different, we've been kind of getting at these later slides in our early conversation, I think, talking about a lot of these issues that will then come up. And then, as Joseph also mentioned, engage with the property owners who have the most power to make a change on the property and hear about what their dreams are and how can we match up the hubs with what they want to be doing. So I'll sort of pause there for any comments or thoughts about these items.
Say, Councilor Heisey, I think that you just said bullet point 2, and I think Joseph just said bullet point 3. Right before.
Sorry, Adam.
Reinforces it. Good.
I think I do have, I don't know where to put this, so I'm just going to put it out there right here. I've been involved in the Child Care for All task force that's been active in Clackamas County. And I know that they've done some work around identifying specific needs and barriers for childcare providers. And it's so curious to me because it didn't come up really anywhere in the individual hubs reports that people were looking for childcare, but I almost feel like that was just in the way the questions were asked or something, because I know every young parent I talk to, every single young parent I talk to who lives in Milwaukie has struggled with finding childcare. And I can't think of anything that would be more valuable almost than being able to walk 15 minutes down the street to get your kid at the end of the day. So I feel like there's some weird cognitive dissonance for me in the results here around that particular thing. And it was mentioned originally in hubs from sort of city staff as childcare being interesting and something we might want to see in those. So I guess I just encourage you to, and I can put you in touch, but to try and draw on some of that information and maybe really in that focused engagement specifically ask, what would you think about having childcare down the street? What would it need to be for it to be available to you personally? What would that look like? And then also getting in touch with the Child Care for All folks and getting a better understanding of what the barriers are for putting childcare facilities in place. Because I see a lot of overlap in many of these individual hubs where people are looking for a place for their kid to play, or an indoor playground, or someplace where they can sit and have coffee while their kids play. That could all overlap so easily with childcare facilities in a really invigorating way, I think, in our communities.
We can be sure to highlight that in our code audit to make sure that we don't have those barriers and that what we do to remove them.
Yeah. Right. And maybe even think about, is this a place where we want to spend, to incentivize this somehow? Because I think based on what I know of county level assessments of childcare needs, our business community would see some merit in having more childcare providers in the city of Milwaukie. So it may be that someday, when we have economic development as a goal, a city council goal, that's someplace where we could put a little time and some real actual dollars.
True story. True story. I want you to also get folks of color who run
Yes.
child care facilities. Because that is very few and far between.
Yeah. That would be awesome. Great.
Excellent. All right. So here we've got the very exciting detail-oriented stuff that planners get very excited about. So the zoning and development code bucket includes auditing the city code to explore creating a new hub zone and or potential overlay zone. So there's a few ideas in there from the report, which we'll try to expand upon through that. Then also creating flexible off-street parking requirements for the hub areas. I think that's something that the climate-friendly and equitable communities rulemaking has been sort of preempting us on a little bit, which makes it easier for us. But most of these hub areas, I think maybe there's a few that might not be close enough to a transit stop to remove sort of the parking requirements, but the vast majority should be, will probably be in that area. And then also updating the allowed temporary uses and to include food carts and other similar uses within the hubs could really help, like with Milwaukie Floral. I've got a little note in here for that, just seeing what's been going on there. So making that a little more flexible as well.
How would it look when food carts more and more are not mobile? Stationary. So would it be that we're putting stationary food carts in these spots?
It could be. I know I'm not super familiar with all of the food cart regulations, but I know that there are pathways to, a variety of different, like smaller commercial uses.
Oh, it's a good question. I think, the way our code sort of treats its mobile food carts, they're intended to be, they may stay parked for a long time, but they can go, kind of thing. If they're, sort of sitting in place on a foundation or something like that, now it's more of a, it's a restaurant or something. And I think that's something that we can be thinking about in the code. Is there a way to talk about little ones? It's still the size of a food cart just because it isn't on wheels. Can we still have, similar regulations about them and to incorporate that and think about how we want to handle something like, mobile food carts. Is it a temporary use? I mean, those tend to have a timeline, right? They're sort of meant to be 6 months or a year, they go. How do we pull that into something that, no, you get to live here now, you don't have to leave. So how do we think about those kinds of, it started as a pop-up and now it stays. And is there a way to incorporate, there's just so many different ways that folks run businesses and how they work.
Food cart, and they only can be there for 12 months.
Yeah.
And then they got to move.
Right.
And you're like playing, where do I find this food cart?
Exactly, right. Yeah,
It's true.
yeah.
And then now there's that La Carreta on, I mean, that's going to be a whole food cart pod
Oh, yeah.
over there.
Yeah. So, no, there's, I think we really want to, as part of even the audit and just kind of thinking about what's the state of the art of this stuff? Like, what's the best practice for being as flexible as we can and really getting to what we want? Because we only end up hurting ourselves when we don't allow this cool stuff to happen. So let's make it happen. Yeah.
All right. We're ready for the next one?
Yeah, are we speaking for Joseph now?
Yeah.
You can pipe in anytime.
Yeah.
We're going to volunteer you for lots of stuff.
So economic development, I'll just read them off. These are just a few ideas. I'm sure there are others that may emerge in terms of getting creative, but create supportive grants and loans to support small business improvements and mitigate potential displacement of those businesses as hubs develop and rents increase. So coordinate with community partners to support these efforts, including, programming for public events and other hub activities that may emerge from this process. And then also identifying how to expand uses in the hubs without significant required improvements like SDCs. How do we kind of open up those? And again, we're starting to talk about these like ahead of as the slides come up. So it's good to see everyone's kind of on the same page. Yeah, any questions or thoughts about these? And Joseph, if you have any comments.
Sure. Yeah, so as part of this, thanks, Adam, as it's kind of been mentioned, this is the programming side. But the whole idea of in the community development world, both planning and economic development, is we're trying to cultivate amenity and placemaking to occur in neighborhoods. And so we do have CET money that is dedicated to economic development programming. So that's the pot of money that we're identifying at this moment to help motivate folks to take advantage of these locations. So that's an idea that we're kind of building upon. So I guess that all being is that we actually have some funds to make some of these things happen already because of the work that you've done on council by getting the CET going many years ago. So that's the good news.
And the CET fund already pays for part of an FTE, so we also have some staff to go with it.
Correct. Yep. Administrative costs are part of the CET fund.
We're almost to the end of our presentation. So this last piece, important to coordinate with other city projects and also go back to all the hubs. I know I visited them, and there's probably a few more pieces to ground truth, but looking at the infrastructure that is or isn't there, like sidewalks, bike lanes, parking capacity, et cetera, as a part of this next phase to really ensure that hubs are ready, for these sorts of changes. And then
Bike staples in that.
Yes. I have noticed occasionally bike parking is a challenge. And then of course, interfacing with a lot of these other projects, it's hard to divorce the neighborhood hubs project from all the other work that the city's doing. So ensuring that the transportation system plan, the high density residential zones work, and also some of the middle housing code stuff, that it's all in sync and that the projects are accounting for one another.
And just on a note on that, the hubs are part of the scope of the update to the TSP. So making sure that we're including that and doing an analysis on how they kind of, like Adam was talking about, what's the infrastructure around there? What's the bike infrastructure? What's the pedestrian infrastructure? And making sure that we have what we need in place to make those areas successful.
And maybe timing on the CIP too, right? So if there's one that's way down on the CIP list, but it's an important hub that would really benefit by that infrastructure coming in earlier, maybe think about.
Yeah, it's almost like a more programmatic approach to the way we roll in our sewer and all of the paving work with our Safe Routes to Schools work. If we're doing one thing in one place, we should think about what other things we want to do at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of our thing, is trying to do that coordination moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know one of the hubs that is identified is on, I think, Stanley, the north side of Stanley. And I was talking with someone in engineering. They were like, we don't know if that can be a bike street or not, and it might end up changing. And that kind of raises the oh, is this the right hub location, or should it shift over to Wichita or what? I don't remember the details, but a lot of this stuff kind of comes up in one place, and you got to kind of connect it.
So then I guess the idea is to just make sure we're on the right track. And if we're on the right track, we have budgeted money in this budget cycle to work on this. We were going to move forward we have the same consultant working on this, or we will, once we get the scope nailed down, as on the comp plan implementation work. So we just set that up to where we could continue moving forward. So once we have this council's blessing, then we're just going to get that scope going, and boom, we're going to start getting the work plan put together and then bring it back to you all and give you a little update just so you know what's coming and like how that timeline's looking. That's kind of the next steps. Yep. So everybody's got a thumbs up or thumbs up.
Yeah, I dig it.
We're on the right track?
Yeah, and have one, like Council President Heisey said about, turning this on its head. I just want to make sure that people aren't forced out, like what happened in North Portland. All those folks that lived in those homes are now being forced out into the numbers. And I want to make sure that, because we're doing this, people aren't forced to leave their community.
We do have that as one of the areas that we want to explore.
Was it in your report? I can't remember
Yeah.
if it was in your report or the other, the broadband. It was just about when you're doing it. It was in one of the reports. It said, just making sure when we're doing this, we're not.
Yeah, it was in there.
It was in this one.
It was in this one, I just can't put my finger on it right this second.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in the, like, if it's fully in the, like, draft longer report, but we did include it in kind of the staff report especially.
It's in our staff report. Yes.
So the more that we do this, the more Milwaukee is going to become like the place to be. Right. It already is, right? But, you know, I don't want to start losing neighbors because.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were thinking that it would be good to kind of, there's kind of a two tiers to that. I think there's like kind of the specific, this hubs project that does have implications in that realm. But then there's also a larger question just overall of how the city is going to handle the changes that are getting ready to come. And that's a higher elevated, more depth conversation that this particular project is going to get into, but we are going to try to touch on that as it relates to the hub development. But I do think that there is a larger conversation at some point that probably needs to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's throughout the region, and it's an economic question, and it's, you know, in some cases, they were literally buying people out to build something big. But in other cases, they were 3 blocks away from that, but all of a sudden their house value got so big that they're just like, well, hell, I could sell this, have a bunch of cash, buy a different house in a cheaper place. And how do you fix that? And that's the tough nut to crack. I mean, it's one thing to protect, but another one entirely to, anybody that comes up with an idea for that, I'm all ears, because I have yet to hear of any city cracking that.
I think it's a fair warning. I think it's something that we're watching, and I think it's something that everybody on this team cares about. I will say that, just to give a little bit of credit, I think Adam Moore actually is doing a really phenomenal job with having similar conversations. And I know you all have met with Adam off and on, but I think the best we can do is be transparent, have hard conversations, and let you know what we think the outcomes are going to be. It doesn't mean we'll be able to stop everything. I think it's just being honest with you about what we do know and what we don't know. And in some cases, we just aren't going to be able to solve international problems.
What?
I know. We try. But
stop nuclear war. What do you
I know, come on.
Yeah, but I think that, true enough. But I think part of the problem is anytime you make this place more attractive, we run a risk. And I think we've been living, sort of dancing that tide for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
So it's just something I'll own and I'll take responsibility for. We'll do our best. But I do think that people in poverty struggle as the price points in the Portland metro region get more expensive.
Yeah. Well, and part of what I didn't articulate a whole lot about what I was thinking around turning it on its head, but you know, to your point, Laura, about, and other folks as well, about increased expectations for naming a hub, I kind of want to dismantle the concept of the hub a little bit, because it is implied, and I don't think that's intentional, but it's implied that there's this progression from, you know, a micro hub to a neighborhood hub, and it's got all this shiny stuff to it. I'm not sure that after COVID, during COVID, after this big pandemic, that's what everybody wants anymore. I feel like I hear a lot about tool libraries and a lot about much smaller, we understand the concept of mutual aid now in a way that we did not when this study was conducted. I think that this is a community that's really interested in that kind of opportunity. And I think it also gets at some of those equity questions. So that's part of what I'm thinking in this is, and I know I just keep adding more to the list, and I'm sorry. So I trust you to, you know, rein it in. But I do feel like that may be some of the feedback that we want to make sure, you know, ground truth that a little. Like, is this really what we still want at this point? Or are we really at a place where what we want to do is create community spaces that are unique to each neighborhood. And maybe it's a tool library in this place, and maybe it's a preschool co-op in this place, and maybe it's a yoga studio coffee shop in this place. It could look, they're all supposed to be different, right? But really getting people away from thinking of this as a mixed use hub structure and broadening their concept of a hub, because I think that's the way we can actually achieve the goals and fulfill some of that excitement that people have whenever we start talking about this idea.
Yes,
More yoga studios.
always, always.
Thank you for everybody that does yoga.
I do also just want to highlight one of the things when we were doing urban renewal, the process sometimes is the place where we can really focus on the equity piece of this, even if the outcomes don't necessarily make it perfect. So I would also just like to make sure that I'm reading the room right, that the process is important. Sometimes we're going to acknowledge that the outcomes may still lead to gentrification and loss. Okay.
Well, and I think on the point the Council President Heisey was making about, maybe some hubs are just small meeting places. I mean, I do think that was kind of the original concept, and I don't want to create, this expectation that they're necessarily all going to grow. And I think there's maybe one step would be to map, and I think maybe this was, I'm sure the city has maps of what property is public property, but some of these hubs may not even require a private landowner. There may be little pockets of city-owned property where.
Parks, so we can put a couple of picnic tables.
And a tool shed and a tool library or
There's all of those dead-end streets.
Yeah.
Where you've got the city still owns the right-of-way that isn't, it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
There's one across from Milwaukie Floral that I keep looking at.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the staging area for a lot of the construction, and I'm like, what could that be? Right there.
Yeah.
No, you raised a good point. I think what we want to make sure is that we create the space for things to happen where they want to happen.
Right.
And we're certainly not trying to dictate a future, like, no, everybody's going to have a 4-story mixed use building. That's definitely not what we're doing. So yeah, just making sure our code matches up with what people want. And make it happen.
Yeah, and to your point about like who benefits, I think it is a really key point. And when we do create economic development programs, when we do make investments of some kind, doing the best we can to make sure the people who are, on the edge of sort of stability in the neighborhood or in the city, are going to be benefiting from them. I feel like that's the way, like you were talking more POC owned childcare businesses, those are the ways that we can kind of help make a difference, I think.
We're going to come back.
We'll be back.
We're always back.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask Laura to stay.
Vacation's over. Planning is back.
Don't believe it.
Behind the scenes.
Yes.
No offense, Vera, but when I see you, I get scared.
I know.
Sometimes I feel the same way. What's she bringing to me now?
Yep.
Like, she's got a lot of papers on her lap.
It's just paper. It's just for show.
It's a prop.
I don't have the binder. That's what you get worried.
The binder is
Today,
good,
I
but
get really afraid.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank
Great
you.
work.
Thank you guys.
now we're gonna return to the. Yep.
Yeah, do we, does anybody need 5 minutes? Or do
Yes,
we-
please. Yes, please.
Okay, we'll take 5 minutes and then we'll come back for the Transportation System Plan Advisory Committee conversation.
Okay.
All right. So our next item was meant to be on the work session. We ran out of time, so we are doing it now. And it is the kickoff, sort of our discussion. Discussion of the kickoff, I don't know, transportation system plan, and how we're going to go about that.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody, for having me here tonight. So, transportation system plan, what is it? Brief overview. It's a long-term plan for transportation improvements throughout the city. The last major update was in 2007, so it's pretty outdated. We've done some little updates along the way, but it really needs a complete overhaul. It's a requirement of the statewide goal 12. We're looking to incorporate all the planning efforts that we've done up until this point and think about all the changes happened in Milwaukie. And there's been so many things since 2007, so it's just ripe for an update. And then I think if you probably remember that part of the comprehensive plan update, the transportation section goals and policies were not updated. So it's the only part of the comp plan that hasn't been updated. So that's going to be kind of the first step in this whole process is we've already started it, doing an assessment of all of the plans and then formulating a draft set of goals and policies based on all of the planning work that we have done over the last 10 years to make sure that we're capturing all the work that's been done in our goals and policies, because that kind of sets the framework for the plan. So we are in the process of doing that internally now, and then we'll bring that out with all of the other bits and pieces of the transportation system plan update to you all. So that is something that we're we're excited about all of it, but that's kind of the first step in the process. So again, going back to looking at the vision, what's the vision for Milwaukie? It starts out and I love this. I use this as something that we're using as a guide, complete network of sidewalks, bike lanes, and paths along well-maintained streets, a robust transit system connecting our neighborhood centers. This is at the heart and the core of the update to the plan. This has been shared with our consultants as something that's driving the plan update. Also, the city council goals are driving it as well. And we talked earlier a little bit about the changes in the climate-friendly, equitable communities work that you all are getting briefed on next week. Sorry that didn't work out to get that before this one, but that is just the way it worked out. So we'll give you kind of an update on how that's going to work. But some of the big changes based on that work are really the equity analysis that's going to be required through this process, which I think is really great. And the climate change work that's going to need to be done that's a little bit different. It's a different push this time. So what we're doing, we're in an interesting situation because we're the first jurisdiction out of the gate that's doing their TSP update. So it's a challenge and also an opportunity. And so when we wrote the scope, we didn't incorporate some of the things that came out of rulemaking, right? So what we're having to do is kind of go back and negotiate, update our scope a little bit, and then do some negotiations with ODOT, who runs the TGM grant along with DLCD, to make sure that we are getting done what needs to get done to meet the requirements, which we also see as something that we want to get done. It's not like we don't want to do this, but also making sure that our budget isn't taken up from doing other things that we talked about, because we're the first people out of the gate and the consultants don't know how to budget for it because they haven't done it before, so they don't know how they're going to do the analysis. So that's kind of slowed down a little bit of the negotiations, but we're really close, I think, to being ready to submit to the Department of Justice. We're actually going to get I think we're going to get a little bit more money from ODOT because of the situation that we're in. They understand that we need more money to do the plan. So we're in the last stages of getting that nailed down. And I'm getting way ahead of myself now, but I'll just say it anyway. So the Department of Justice, we send it off to them, and then it could take 4 to 6 months before they get back to us. So
I read that out just fine.
I know it's not good news, but maybe it'll take less. Maybe we'll get lucky. But the way things have been going, I'm just going to kind of think that it's going to be the worst case scenario. And if it gets better, then that's great. So that's kind of where we are. Here, I just wanted to put out some, tell you all, this is the work that's included in the scope right now. These are all the tasks. So you take all of these tasks and then they kind of go through a vetting with the technical committee
and they go through a vetting with the advisory committee, and then they go through a vetting with the community, and then they come through planning commission, and it comes through city council. So it's this really iterative process. So everybody's being briefed along the way, and then we have engagement points, the critical points all along the way that we're feeding into it. So it's a really iterative process to get us through the whole plan. So the reason two committees we would like to form is the technical committee. First of all, these are who we have collectively thought to be on the technical committee. If you all think of anybody else, or I'm missing anybody here, this is the time to talk about it. But we've got ODOT, DLCD, Metro, Clackamas County, TriMet, Milwaukie Police Department, the Fire District, School District, and Parks and Recreation District. Yes?
So that rule about we stop thinking, clearly at 8 o'clock, it's manifesting. Anessa Hartman is the new Clackamas County coordinator. First time ever that there's a Clackamas County coordinator for Oregon United. Is that right? Someone help me out here.
I can't remember.
Okay.
Sorry. What it's called.
Unite.
I'll see if I can figure it out here. This is notable because they are doing equity work and they have an interest in climate in particular and transportation through that. So I honestly doubt that she has capacity, but I'm just trying to think of how we might get an equity focused presence in that technical committee.
Yep, I think that's a great idea. And if you send me the contact information, like all these are wishful thinking. I still have to recruit these folks and make sure that they have the capacity to be on it.
She's also running for state rep right now, so it's.
Yeah, but I think she needs two jobs.
Right.
Yeah. She's the Clackamas County Director for Unite Oregon. There we go.
Okay, Clackamas.
I'll send her, I'll put you two in touch.
And if everybody agrees that that's a good direction to go, then at least, we can work with her. And then maybe, even if she can't do it, maybe somebody in Clackamas County that might serve in that role could help us, could do that.
So the question I had sort of backs up more broadly. I was on the committee back in 06, 07 when we did this the last time. And they broke it up at that point into freight, bike ped,
There was a team for each
cars.
mode.
Yeah. And I feel like there was something around, maybe rail was rolled into freight or something, but I feel like there was a fourth, I don't know what it was. I was on the bike ped.
Really?
I don't know, shocking.
Actually, I think bike was separate from pet,
Was it?
from walking. Well, I don't know.
It's been a long damn time and way too many meetings with Metro and their transportation system planning process and all that.
Yeah, so, let's talk, so I'll flip over to the advisory committee and maybe that can help. So I think for the advisory committee, we start to get at bringing some of the other people, like we have the technical committee is supposed to be doing one thing, right? And they're really bringing that technical lens to everything. But then we're going to have the advisory committee that's more of folks that are have specialties that they're interested in bringing to the table and talking about, right? So cycling, walking, business owners, people with children, senior people, people with disabilities. So we're really trying to reach out to all those different folks and then bring all of that to the table so that we're looking at it from a holistic as opposed to kind of putting it in particular buckets.
Silos.
Even though we will, if we see the need to pull out something for a specific conversation that we need to have, because we talked about having little working groups as necessary if they come up. So say we wanted to focus on the business interest, or we really heard the business community saying, we really want to do that. Can we have a couple of working groups? We can do something like that. We also know that we have a really active bicycle advocacy folks here in the city. And so maybe there would be a working group for that. We're trying to balance like how much money we have and how we use the consultant compared to if we just go out to folks, but we are keeping that in mind. So if things bubble up to the surface, that we can kind of do these spin-off groups to make sure that we're getting at all of those different things.
And probably because we're a very small city, relatively speaking, we can pull it off that way. I mean, there's something I think of transportation as systems, right? Literally, that you can't get to point A from point A to point B if there's this hole in the middle of the system for whatever form of transportation you're using. And when we do it at the metro level, we're thinking about bike as a system. Like, how do we get from here to there? What are all the parts and pieces? And I just worry a little bit that a group of people, even though there might be 3 bike-centric people in the group, aren't going to be really thinking about the system. And again, small city, for what are we, 4 square miles or whatever. So probably it doesn't matter, but that was the little red flag that came up for me.
And I understand that. I think for me, what I keep coming back around to in my mind is we are a small city and we don't have big major road expansion projects and we don't have major thoroughfares. We have an opportunity here to really focus on bike and ped and really make that kind of the driver of our TSP because we don't have a lot of the issues that other larger jurisdictions do have. So we get to kind of be very specifically focused, I think. So that's what I keep coming back around to, is that we don't have as many problems. I mean, we have our own set of issues that, of course, we're always trying to fix. And but I think that we are in kind of a unique position that we could be really specifically focused on all of the alternative transportation modes as compared to
Including transit?
Including transit.
That was the other group.
Yeah. Right. And transit is, a little out of our hands because of the way that it works, but we do need to obviously still need to advocate for that. And we'll have TriMet as a technical, person on the committee.
It is currently, and the conversation that has come up repeatedly and from so many different places is, TriMet is sort of big picture transit, right? If you're going from Milwaukie to St. John's, that's the transit system you're going to use. But if you're trying to get from, some block in Llewellyn to the light rail station or to downtown or to a grocery store, and you can't ride a bike or don't own a car or all those things, we don't really have that system. And, one of the very first wonky conversations I got into was with the owners of Waverly Greens, clear more than a decade and a half ago. And they were really excited about the idea of jitneys. And, which is a real common thing. You've seen it in a lot of other countries, right? Where there's just like microbus size, VW bus size things, only very often with open sides and seats facing out, and it stops and you hop on and you go and you hop off. But it really, really, really works, and it serves the neighborhoods. And I get all the hell around that, right? The cost of employment and all the things that go with it. But I want us to keep thinking about how we solve for that.
Yeah.
And Uber's not the answer because Uber's expensive.
A voice from above.
God has something to say. Wait.
It's just Joseph.
Oh.
Listen to me first. First, I want to apologize for this cowlick that just can't be maintained tonight. But second of all,
Now it's all I can see.
I thought that was an affectation.
apologies. Dealing with some stuff over here. Now I lost my train of thought. So, Mr. Mayor, you're talking about first and last mile strategies, kind of broadly speaking, to kind of incorporate more than just the Uber and the kind of private entities, but other aspects of the first and last mile strategy, sounds like.
Much, yes.
Yeah, and Laura, I can't remember. I believe the scope kind of gets to that, but I can't remember. But if it's not, let's definitely talk about that as well.
Because it's an ongoing, it's a hard problem to solve, right? And it's so interesting because in other countries, I've lived in Nairobi, there was those buses everywhere, right? But America's just not ready for that kind of thing, I think, because there's so many rules and regulations about how you can get people around and how people get. So I think that but to your point, I think that yes, we do need to have that conversation and continue to try to explore those different options. I just think it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult nut to crack. So I'm not going to guarantee any promises, but I will guarantee that we can talk about it and try to brainstorm.
I don't know if it was before you came, but Kelly has done some work on shuttle programs and shuttle funding and some of that. So Kelly has some.
Good to know. Yep. I will get that from Kelly, and so that we will have that as a baseline to at least start from.
So the owner, well, it's a family that owns it, but the guy that tends to run things has a really deep interest in this concept. So he might be somebody that we want to
talk to at least.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good idea. All right. So are you all generally good with this approach? Missing anybody or?
Well, I mean, I think your list at the end is important, and it's more than 4 categories. And to that end, I think maybe we could do with fewer comp plan CPAC people, because there's probably already going to be some overlap between that category and planning commissioners or PSAC members or people in those last categories. So I think it's more important to get people in those last categories than necessarily having 3 CPAC or CPAC members. At this point, I'm not sure how much. I mean, yes, they know the comp plan, but I don't know how much that process is value added to this.
Yeah, hopefully all of the committee members will be walked through the vision and walked through the comp plan.
Oh, yeah.
And have copies of those to study. So I don't disagree necessarily. I mean, obviously crossover, right? Extra point for having been on CPAC or whatever. But
I think maybe if we approach it like it doesn't necessarily have to be as rigid, like maybe we take down the number of that are required that we want to see from CPIC and CPAC. Maybe it's 1 from each, right? We know that we want that because they do have consistency going through the process.
Sure.
They could also be that you could have been on the comp plan and meet one of the other categories as well. So just kind of giving some flexibility in there and being a little loose with it, knowing that we just at least want 2, but if we have more that also fill the other roles. So would that be an approach that would be acceptable?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. And I think, and then the other thing, so I guess I have the application. I think I put that in the packet, and it was basically based on the vision advisory committee, and I basically just took it and kind of updated it. So if you have any concerns about that, let me know, but it's really a kind of a replica with this new language kind of put into it. So that's kind of the foundation that I'm using, and I'll change it based on this conversation that we just had. And then I was hoping to talk about who from council might be on it. However, we have a little bit of leeway, as you all know. The reason that I'm coming to you now to try to get this set up is because there's going to be a process that we're going to need to go through, and it's going to take a little lag time from the time you all give me direction till we advertise it, till we select people. So I want to be sure that that committee that is up and run is at least established, so that whenever the DOJ gets back to us and drops it on us, we're ready to go. So and that might be sooner and it might be later. It might be January before this thing kicks off. It's not under my control right now. So maybe it isn't necessary for you all to decide tonight who from council, because there's going to be a big change up when that happens. And so maybe it would be okay just to not figure that out tonight. And then we could wait until we know when that moment is happening. Then somebody can sit on the committee for 1 meeting until the new council gets there, or however we want to
Otherwise, we'll be appointing Desi to all the committees.
I'm not ready.
For sure.
What do you think about that, Desi?
He for sure will be here. I for sure won't be here. That's all we know.
So if we have a little bit of flexibility there, I think we could just keep it open and we can figure that out a little bit later. Yeah.
Can I just add, I think you've answered the TSPAC and the TSPTs. We need, we're going to come up with something else. But in the application process, if you could just do us a favor, read through it. If you see something that you're really concerned about, just let me know. Yeah, let her know directly. And we'll send out a final draft to all of you via email. Again, you can double check it and make sure you don't see anything wrong, but that way we don't have to.
The only thing that's maybe a question that goes directly to, I get around 25% by car, 10% by bike, 50% by bus, something that gives us a sense of people's normal life and their transportation, the way they currently function, because having the lived experience of using, for example, the transit system and knowing what the flaws are in it is going to be super valuable. And the lived experience of trying to get around the city with kids on a bike, right?
Yep.
Or whatever. I think that's needs to be, you kind of ask the question in there, but when it's so general like that, tell us something about yourself, we're not going to get.
Okay. I can work on that language a little bit and see if I can make it a little bit more specific. Like what percentage, like if there's a percentage that you try to ride your bikes with your kids, kind of like ask for a little bit more detail from folks.
Yeah, around their transportation habits.
What's your transportation story?
That's right.
I think and I'll read it and give you better feedback than this, Laura, but per our conversation that we just had and Councilor Beatty's comments, I think it'd be nice to flip it so that we're currently accepting applications for people who are particularly, are these things. We're also going to be looking for positions held by a city councilor, planning commissioner, those people already know. We don't need to list them up front. And I always feel like when you list those qualifications up front, people think, I'm not that.
I don't check the box.
I don't check the box. I shouldn't bother.
Great call.
Yep.
Yeah, very
Great
good.
call. Yep, I will do that. All right, if we're good to go, I'll just continue to move forward. I will hope to hear back from you all, let's say by the end of next week, with any comments to the application itself. That would be great. Or if anything else comes up, and then we can move forward. So, okay, end of next week. And with that, I already kind of told you the timeline, and so thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me tonight. Appreciate it.
So when will it go to DOJ?
It should be really soon. We're this close. We're this close. It's out of my control because it's the negotiation and it's a negotiation between ODOT and Kittleson, and we're at the table, but it's really, it is our negotiation, but it's really their negotiation. So it's an interesting process that I have not yet been.
ODOT involved in a process that then goes to DOJ. I can't imagine that taking very long at all.
No, not very long at all, but we're really close to submitting it. So I will, how about this? When we submit it, I will send you all an email, just like, hey, we submitted to DOJ, hopefully, and Kelly was gonna maybe make some calls and see if she knew somebody.
So this is a curious, why is it going to the DOJ?
Because you get federal funds because it's a TGM grant. I think that's
it?
Yeah. Yep, it comes from federal money. And they're behind now, so. Of course. So it's a blessing and a curse. I think when we started this, we are getting more money to do the project. So I think ultimately it's a good call. It's just been this kind of painful to get here, but in the long run, I think it'll be better for the city to have some patience. I keep telling myself that, so I don't. All right, thank you all.
Thank you so much. Good job. All right. Well, I think that's it then. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn?
A second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. We are adjourned.
All of my grant funds for my pepper, it all has to go